What is going on, Ivy Nation? Welcome to another edition of Upon Further Review, Monday night style. And I appreciate everybody's patience, by the way. We didn't do a show last night because I was dealing with the kiddo who, I guess it's going around. There's like this congestion, like head thing, fatigue situation. So we got him loaded up with some, antibiotics and whatnot. And he's literally upstairs sleeping right now. So hopefully he can kick that, get it out of there, and be ready to go Friday night because got a huge game Friday night. Homecoming, big rivalry, conference title on the line, all of the above. So we appreciate you guys being patient, let me tend to the family. Wasn't able to watch the film while I was at urgent care. And, but hey, today's a new day. So thank you guys for hanging with us. And so Bryan and I have dove into the film, and we saw some things that we really liked for sure. But then we also saw some things that obviously still need to be improved upon. And this is also a very, very, very good time for a buy, Bryan. That. So,
very curious to see what the news is on some of the guys that went down.
No doubt.
Very curious to see.
And what stinks is we don't have a press conference until next week. But
yeah, and they've been super weird about telling us anything regarding injuries. But the other thing too, Vince, it's like it's amazing what this team has done with as many injuries they've had. Like, I just want to say this: when you talk about thinking about the game, do you know Notre Dame played this game basically without 7 starters, essentially? Right? Like, one of them was a guy that you lost preseason, but then at points in the game, you were playing without 9 starters. If you think about it, Jagasaw, no Billy Schrouth, no Ashton Craig, no Cooper Flanagan, who has been Notre Dame's best blocking tight end and has basically started at tight end and had more snaps than the other tight end so far. You played without those 4. Then you played without Jordan Patojo, Josh Burnham, and Christian Gray. 7 starters.
And for a minute, without Benjamin Morrison.
Then you lost Jordan Faison during the game. Jack Kaiser's out by halftime with an injury. Boubacar Traore goes out for the game. He's your new starter at Viper. He goes out in the second quarter. And like you said, there was one point. And one of your key rotation guys, Jaden Mickey's no longer on the team. So think about all the guys they played without during that game, and they still went out and beat the number 15 team in the country and did so with a lot of talent. However, you're kind of getting to the point now where, you've bbeen able to weather this storm so far, but you lose a couple more guys, and it's going to be a lot harder to do that.
Yeah.
If we're being honest. And, it just kind of, when you think about that, it just added a little bit of context to me for some of the mistakes that we saw, especially on defense we'll talk about, because there was a lot of times where you're looking down there and there's like 6, 7 freshmen or sophomores on the field.
Yep.
But also just, it talked a little bit about this team's grit. That they're playing without essentially 3 starters in the offensive line, and the offensive line had plenty of issues in this game, which we're going to talk about. But they fought their butts off. This defense made a lot of mistakes in this game, but they fought their butts off. The quarterback had some reads I didn't love, fought his butt off. You talk about the running back, Jeremiah Love, probably his worst game so far from a running standpoint, played his butt off in the game and was able to make plays in other ways, like as a lead blocker, as a pass catcher, stuff like that. Like, I was so, I don't want to say proud because they're not my team, they're not my players, but I'm looking at it thinking about, if I was a Notre Dame coach, I would have 2 thoughts right now, like, guys, there's a ton we got to clean up on the bye. And then the 2 is, I'm proud as heck of the way you guys handled adversity and fought your butts off in that game. And that's certainly something that to commend from this football team, Vince, and something that they had to overcome in order to win this game. But you start to think about it as you're breaking down film, because you're like, that's not the team I was watching when I was grading A&M film, or you know what I mean, just or even Purdue film from 2 weeks ago. Like, man, they could have used number 12 on Saturday on defense.
Mm-hmm.
They could have used number 5 in the second half.
Yeah, the whole time. Yeah, exactly.
Right. They could have used Billy Schrouth and Ashton Craig up the middle. I could have liked to see what those kids can do. Could have really, really used Charles Jagasaw at left tackle. Could have really used Cooper Flanagan's blocking in the game at tight end, because the tight end was blocking was a hot mess. We'll get into that during the thing. So you look at all that and you're like, Man, they went out and won that game and literally had a double-digit lead for most of the game, right, Vince? I mean, they took a double-digit lead in the first quarter, right?
Correct.
So they took a double-digit lead at what was the minute mark of that? So they tied it up at the 7-minute mark, took a double-digit lead at the 2:40 mark. You led all the second quarter, led all of the third quarter, and then Louisville ties it up makes it a 7-point game at the 11-minute mark, and it took Notre Dame 2 minutes to go down there and put it back up 14, and then 4 minutes later, Louisville scored to make it a 7-point game. I mean, so you led by double digits, by multiple scores for over half the game, despite all that, and only trailed for 5-6 minutes, and one drive. I mean, it was a long drive. That's the only reason it was 6 minutes.
I was going to say,
it was a long drive, but it was
one possession. They had possession of the ball. Yeah, right. Correct. Yeah, right. I mentioned this in the earlier show. It's like in the moment, it felt like a very tenuous 10-point lead. But when you look back on it, I mean, they pretty much had control of the game, with everything that you said, all the starters out, all the adversity that they had to face, all of those different things. They still had control of that game, the vast majority of that game. The vast majority. Didn't feel like that in the moment. I'll be the first one to admit it. I was all in my feels there for a little while. Like, oh boy, here this is going to happen and this is going to happen as you see more guys go down to injury and fumbles and Notre Dame basically gift wrapped 14 points. It felt like to Louisville, right? And you're like, oh my gosh, what is happening? What is going to happen here? But they had control, man. They had control of that game. And again, I will emphasize this is a wonderful time for a bye because there's a lot of things that they can get cleaned up schematically, philosophically, and injury-wise, obviously, as well. And I don't think I realized this going into the season, Brian. Not only is this a great time for a bye, but then you get these next 3 games, and then you get another bye to give you to the home stretch. That is just a really well-placed double bye situation for Notre Dame. Just the way these games are kind of stacking up and who they're playing within those segments too. It's fantastic, frankly, is what it feels like to me. So,
yep. And I do think somebody responded, you only had X amount of yards in the second and third quarter. Do you think that's control? Yeah, it's control because the other team didn't score. Exactly. I mean, again, we have this thing where we focus on these little tiny areas and we ignore it's like there's this little tiny thing they didn't do great over here. And then over here, there's all these good things, but I just want to zero in on this one thing so I can feel a way about that. They kept Louisville out of the end zone, right? Like they kept them off the board. I mean,
right.
Yeah, that's pretty good. That's pretty good, guys, and so when you do that, you're controlling action. Yes, and Notre Dame, Louisville, every time Louisville scored, Notre Dame was able to go out there and make sure that it never became a game again. And yeah, that's control. When you lead the number 15 team in the country for over 52 minutes, yeah, you did pretty good. Mm-hmm. And there's things about the yardage aspect that I think are skewed. Notre Dame number 1. We'll talk about that when we get into the offensive side. But look, that's control. Yes, that's control. Right. Notre Dame was the better football team on Saturday from the start of their first drive on offense to the end of the game. It didn't start great. It definitely didn't start great. But I think there's a lot to like about that. There's a lot to be proud of if you're a football coach. And then also a lot to look at and say, fellas, that was great that you did that. We can't keep playing this way every week, though, from an execution. Bring this effort every week. Bring this focus every week. Bring this energy every week. That part's great. But we got to clean up the execution part. We got to clean up. And that's what we're going to focus on a lot today in the rest of the show.
So let's jump into the offensive keys. So this is kind of how we do the show, everybody. If you have not tuned into and upon further review, I want to make sure I remind you kind of how we do things. We will go over the offensive keys to success, keys to victory for the offense. Then we'll do the same thing for the defense to kind of decide, did Notre Dame get the check mark there? Did they get a minus there? What is it? How did they do? So we'll do that for the offense. We'll do that for the defense. And then we will talk about our takeaways on both sides of the football, as well as the key moments in the game and kind of where things may have turned or, whatever those key moments happen to be. we're going to talk about those as well. So we kind of chop it up into 4 segments: keys, takeaways, and we'll kind of go from there. And I think we should probably answer everybody's questions at some point or another as we go through all 4 of those,
Super Chats.
those various segments.
Super
and then,
Chats.
of course, yes, at the end, we will also hit Super Chats. Tonight is one of those shows where it's not a mailbag. And so if you do want to get a question in, or you want to make a comment or whatever, make sure you hit us with one of those Super Chats, and then we will make sure to get to that at the end of the show. We are not ignoring you as they come in. It'll just be kind of an end of the show. It's just kind of how we always do it. So yeah, offensive keys to the game, Brian. Let's jump right into it. You had your offensive keys to the game show earlier on in the week, and the first one is usually the same, and it's
always the same, my friend.
Yes, start
until
fast,
Notre
be
Dame,
aggressive.
until they can come out and do it on a consistent basis. That will always be a key, and then occasionally it'll be a key for certain games anyway. And Vince, I mean, this is about as good as it got against a good opponent. I would argue this is the best start to a game that a Notre Dame offense has had against a good opponent. I'm trying to think about, some other games like last year. They beat a really good NC State team, but the offense struggled early on. They didn't really break it open until the second quarter when Audric went on that long run, and they had a couple big plays. Like, their offense didn't do a whole lot in the first half. They just had they had the big long run by Audric. They had the big long pass catch by Tobias. You had the broken play, scramble, long catch by Chris Tyree. Outside of that, it's like the offense didn't do a whole lot. They put the game away, but as far as the start, they didn't do a great job with the start. I mean, USC was more about the defense having a great start and giving them minus, fields of less than 10 yards to have to put it in the end zone. You know what I mean? Like, if you look at Marcus Freeman's tenure, and what I consider Marcus Freeman's tenure is Ohio State 22 to now, right? I don't count the bowl win, and I probably wouldn't count it, if I'm being honest, if he won it, because, again, it wasn't his team.
You're right, exactly.
And,
he was an interim. In my opinion, he was an interim at that point. I mean, yes,
exactly.
He got the job,
and that wasn't his coordinator and all that, but he was in a different role.
Yeah,
exactly. So anyway, start Ohio State to now. It's hard for me to think of a better start in a game against a good opponent. We've seen them put some bad teams away early, but against a good opponent. And that's something that, to me, I mean, this is a plus, Vince, because I think it was incredibly important to the success of this football team and you winning the game. I don't know if Notre Dame would have been able to have this game might have looked a lot different if you didn't do it, because when you put Louisville behind the sticks the way that they did, it's like it made it much harder for that. It's going to be tough to play catch up against this defense. And even with spotting them 2 touchdowns, because Notre Dame spotted Louisville 2 touchdowns. Like I heard I was told that a national guy said this. I didn't hear it, that, the game was more about Louisville's mistakes. And I'm thinking, Louisville's mistakes? What are you talking about? I'm like, Louisville's had 2 touchdowns that covered less than 20 yards, each. And it was a thing where it's like, you don't start fast in this game, Vince. You don't respond to that early drive. And I know we'll talk about that specific drive in a little bit, but if you don't have that response after fumbling the opening kickoff, defense gives up a touchdown. You had 2 blown coverages essentially on the first drive, and they go score. And all of a sudden your offense does what it's done all year in regard to just like not looking great and things like that. But I mean, they have started, like I said, with a score, and now 4 of the 5 games, but it just wasn't that score. It was your defense then went and forced a turnover, and you took it 53 yards for another touchdown. Your special teams forces a turnover. You punch it in one play. I mean, you scored a touchdown on your first 3 drives of the game. You took a 21-7 lead. If you can't get a plus for that, then we just need to stop giving out pluses. You know what I mean? So those are the things you look at, Vince, and say, hard for me to say, because like you said, you made this point in the postgame show. Yes, the 3rd touchdown was a short field. The first 2 touchdows, you had to go over 50 yards to get in the end zone.
Yeah, you started in minus territory in both of them.
Right.
I mean, the first one was obviously, a touchback, so it was minus 25, and you got to go 75. But the other one, you were still in minus territory. You were still on your side of the field. And so that's still a drive. Like, that doesn't just happen. Look, the difference is for the 2 touchdowns that Louisville scored in the first half were both on turnovers, obviously. One was 3 plays, 24 yards. The other one was 3 plays, 9 yards, for a total of 2 minutes and 54 seconds. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's how they got both of their touchdowns in the first half. Notre Dame's one touchdown drive. Well, you can pick either one. Pick either one of the first 2 touchdown drives. They're both longer and they both lasted longer. Okay. So it's a completely different scenario. If Notre Dame doesn't turn the ball over, Brian, Louisville doesn't score in the first half.
They get a field goal, right? No, they didn't get their field goal to they didn't get their field goal to the third quarter. Fourth quarter. You're correct.
Fourth quarter. Yeah, so they're scoreless in 'the first half. They scored because of Notre Dame's mistakes.
Their 2 touchdown drives in the first half, Vince, traveled a total of 33 yards.
Yes.
And the first one only traveled 33 yards because they had a penalty, right? Because I believe they started at the 16. No, they started at the 24.
They started at the 24.
They started at the 24. I thought it was the 16. And so it started at the 24, and you go 24 yards. And I mean, you're already in field goal range. You recover the ball in field goal range, and then they go down and score. And then their second touchdown drive went 9 yards.
Correct.
Like 33 yards for 14 points. That's a pretty good ratio. Notre Dame had one of those drives.
Turnovers.
They did.
Yeah,
they
did.
But they had one of those drives. Notre Dame's other touchdown drives were 75, 53, 75 yards, and then they had the field goal drive was a shorter drive as well. Right.
Off the interception.
So, right. So you look at it and say, yeah, that's plus Louisville in regard to getting points off turnovers, essentially points off short fields. They won that battle 14-10 over Notre Dame. So the fast start was a big part of that, because now you've got Louisville playing catch up all game against that defense, and you're going to make some plays here and there. I felt like Notre Dame I was disappointed with that last touchdown drive they gave up, because I thought they kind of went away from what was working and forced Louisville to go on a longer drive and take some minutes off, whatever. But Notre Dame, I thought, controlled that, and it was because of that start. It got the crowd fired up. You could tell the players had some confidence. You almost gave it up, though, when you fumbled. When Jadarian Price fumbled, that sucked a lot of the wind out of their sails, and Notre Dame never really recovered from that, if you think about it. But because of the 21-7 start, it didn't cost you the way it might have in a different situation. Because, like, imagine if they didn't get one of that let's say they didn't have that second touchdown drive where they took over the 53 and they kind of fuddled around and punted it. Now all of a sudden Jadarian has that fumble and Louisville goes down and scores. It's all of a sudden a 14-14 ball game just like that.
Sure.
You needed every single one of those drives to really make it comfortable, because when you play a team like Louisville, they're going to punch back. Right? That's the route. They're going to punch back, and they did. Sure. And Notre Dame was able to counter it and go out there and get the W. So this is about as impressive of a plus as I've given Notre Dame since I've been thinking about that. I'm trying to think of another game, Vince, where they played, like I said, a good team. Like, and even some of the teams that were ranked that weren't good, that were not, maybe not so great. I still don't remember them starting this well. Well, I'm trying to I'm trying to think, like Notre Dame. I'm thinking like 2022 against North Carolina, but that was an unranked football team. But Notre Dame didn't get their first score till the second quarter of that game, Vince. You know what I mean? Now the second quarter they went off, but they didn't get a single point in the first half or first quarter. Their first touchdown came at the 12:57 mark of the first quarter or second quarter. Excuse me, I'm saying this all types are wrong. So that's another game where that wasn't a ranked team, but that was a good team in my opinion. But you didn't start fast there. You fell behind 7-0, and you didn't get your first touchdown to the second quarter. So I honestly can't think of another game against an opponent like this where Notre Dame had a better start under Marcus Freeman than what we saw. Yeah, I'm looking through it now, and because again, against Clemson, you jumped out on Clemson early, but that was because of your defense. Again, in your special teams. Your first touchdown of the game was on special teams. So, that's pretty good start. Pretty good start.
And
matter of fact, was last year against USC. Remember how Notre Dame only scored 7 points in the first quarter of that game. Notre Dame's only touchdown in the first quarter against USC last year was the touchdown after Xavier Watts' interception, the 12-yard touchdown drive. Notre Dame's second touchdown of that game, Vince, did not come until 4:14 left in the second quarter, and it was a 2-yard touchdown drive. So, again, you think about, 48 points. Well, that was the defense that did that.
Yeah.
So, I would argue this is the best start that Notre Dame has had against a team like that. And it's even Syracuse 2 years ago. That was another one. The defense got the first score of that game. The offense didn't play great early in that game. They played okay, but didn't play great early in that game. That's another one that you could maybe consider. But I don't even think they played as well that game because the defense got them sparked. Notre Dame only scored Notre Dame's first offensive touchdown didn't come until the 8:23 mark of the second quarter. So yeah, they had missed field goal, punt, touchdown. So they didn't. Yeah, so 2 non-scorers on their first 2 drives. Go ahead, Vince.
Yeah, the only point I want to make about the fast start is in a vacuum, if you just look at what the offense did in their first 3 drives, score 3 touchdowns, boom, 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 21 points, first quarter, great. It's still a fast start, right? But then you open it up a little bit to what the atmosphere was like in the stadium, what the situation was after that turnover and after Louisville punches it in. And it's a completely different scenario, and it even enhances more the fast start by the offense. You know what I mean? So like you're down 7-0 instantly before the offense even has a chance to touch the football. Okay. It's a big swing because of the fumble. It's a short field. They go in, they punch it in after 3, right? Okay. So Notre Dame goes down and scores. All right. It's 7-7. Defense is back on the field. Let's see what they do. 46-yard run. Okay. You're like, oh crap. What's wrong with the like in your emotional brain, you're thinking, what's wrong with the defense? Now they cause a fumble. They give the ball back to the offense. They go down and score another touchdown, right? And then the special teams gives them a short field. They score another touchdown. So the way that it happened, so not just the fact that in the first 3 series they went and scored a touchdown, which is great in a vacuum, but the situation that they were in, the way that they picked up the defense, I think really for the first time this season, the offense picks up the defense and like, guys, we got
defense
you.
Was having it. Yep.
That was huge to me for this team. That was absolutely massive for this team that the offense finally said, guys, we got you. We're going to go put some points on the board, give you guys a second to kind of regroup and do your thing. And then the defense played pretty well down the stretch, right? So it was
not a good start for the Notre Dame defense.
No,
not a good start for the Notre Dame defense. Yeah, you got the great turnover, but that came after a 40-plus yard run
by the quarterback.
You just blew a read zone. So that's and so people talked about the Oklahoma State game because they remember it being 28-7. Notre Dame punted on 3 of their first 5 possessions against Oklahoma State in that game. They only scored 2 touchdowns on their first 5 possessions. They started to kind of pull away late. So they went touchdown, punt, punt, and then they got 2. Then they went touchdown, missed field goal, touchdown. So they didn't really start rolling until second quarter. Late first quarter, second quarter. And that was aided by the defense in that game as well. Yet Oklahoma State getting a fumble. So, those are big, Vince. That's a great start. I think you say that, Vince, and I'm curious how the defense is going to look at that coming out of the bye week. Like, hey guys, maybe this is something that can get us going. So, first key to the victory, Vince, is big the time. Most important one. Big time plus. Big time plus
for sure. Next key to victory that you had on the show was mixing up the run game. Thought it was good early, but later on, I don't think that was the case.
Well, I don't even think early it was even what I am referring to here. What they did a good job of early, Vince, is showing some new wrinkles.
Okay.
They did their quarterback, and I didn't even know what to call it because it was. I called it counter because of the backfield action, but it's almost like power. They either took the center or guard. So if the center was covered, they would down block with the play side guard, kick the center, and then wrap the running back instead of the tight end or the backside tackle. So they didn't run a count. We've seen them run counter Trey this year. We've seen them run sort of the new school counter with the backside guard and the tight end. We've seen them do some different looks where the tight end would go one way and come back. We've seen quarterback counter with the tight end and the guard pulling. They had the center or the backside guard. If the center was uncovered, he would down block, and then the backside guard would kick out, and then they would wrap around. So I called it counter, but it almost looked like inverted power. Because on power, normally it's you get a quick play side kick and then a wrap from the backside. This was more of a center to backside wrap, so that's why I went counter, because it's just blocking scheme wise, it just looks more like counter. but the backfield action I said earlier was more counter. That was actually more power. Excuse me. The blocking was more counter, but the backfield action was literally just drop step by the quarterback, and then he would go. That's what Power O used to be. The old school Power O, Vince, out of under center. It was just drop, open step, let the blocking go, and then boom, you go. And so those are all things that we looked at, and you say, man, boy, that was a nice wrinkle. You had some inside zone stuff, but other than that, like that wrinkle got you some success early. But outside of that, it was pretty much just that in inside zone, with the exception of they ran a quick pitch to Aeneas Williams that went big, and I was like, man, please bring something like that back at some point in time. But I'm looking at it, Vince, and the runs were, quarter Q counter, inside zone, a quick kick, quarterback counter, inside zone, quarterback counter, inside zone, quarterback counter, inside zone, running back counter, inside zone, quarterback counter, the quick pitch, inside zone, counter, inside zone, Q counter, Q lead, counter, inside zone, counter. That's literally every run they ran. And my thing is, like, give me something. This is what we talked about in postgame. Give me something that takes the eyes, messes with the eyes and the discipline of the Louisville defense. And in this game, you basically, like, I don't think the offensive line played great. I think they played hard, and I commend them for that. But I didn't think they played great. But I don't think they were helped a lot in their run blocking was not great, Vince. It wasn't bad. I mean, they competed their butts off. I didn't think they were helping them at all. Everything was downhill. And even the run by Jadarian Price that he bounced outside for a 14-yard gain, which was probably the best run of the game, was more of an inside zone that he popped and almost got called for holding because of Mitchell Evans on that particular run.
Remember that?
And honestly,
you and I both looked at each other like, they could have called that.
They got away with it. And I wouldn't have been, I'd have been like, okay, that's a little ticky-tack, but he did yank the jersey. I mean, clearly yanked the jersey.
His hands were completely outstretched like this. Like,
dude. Now, here's that guy has no chance at tackling Jadarian Price. That's what's so frustrating about it.
Yes.
Like, you don't need to do that with these running backs. And so I just felt like, give me a jet. Give me some sort of, you want to run quarterback power? That's cool. Go 21 personnel, jet sweep Jeremiah Love, and then bring the quarterback power the other way, right? You know what I mean, Vince? Like, so give me 21 personnel, okay? And then you can put Jeremiah in the front side slot. You can have your tight end backside if you still want to do that. You can send them on a jet motion, fake that action that way, and then bring that kick, bring that running back wrap. It times up perfectly with what you're trying to do in that particular play. There's all types of things that you could do, Vince, where man, you got to go out there and make those, give your guys a chance to do something. Give me another toss play. Give me something where you're using we're running downhill against them. Those are things that I want to see more of, Vince, and that's where that lack of creativity came from, because the thing we said when we broke down that mix up the runs is the best part of the Louisville defense is right up the middle. And you basically took an offensive line that had three guys that didn't start the season as your backups, and you said, hey, guys, we're going to run right at this team for 60 minutes and not give you guys really anything to kind of hang your hats on to kind of help you get going. We're just going to do that and expect you guys to get at it. And I didn't think that was putting your guys in the best position to be successful, to be honest with you. So I give it a little bit of I give it a minus overall. I mean, it was nice early. It was some good wrinkles early, but Louisville kind of figured those wrinkles out by the second half, man. This is a well-coached defense as well. They figured those wrinkles out, and I didn't feel like Notre Dame really did enough to take advantage of that, to be honest with you. Like, I thought there was a lot more that they could have done to have some success in that game, to be honest with you, and that they didn't do. Like, even on that 4th and 1, give me a smoke, give me an orbit motion with your Z, where if the linebackers pause for just a second with that reverse action, maybe you come back to that on the next 4th down or something like that. So there just was a lot of that stuff where I would have liked to seen do some things with your run game that just doesn't allow Louisville to just play downhill for 60 minutes against your run game. I didn't think that made a lot of sense. And so I didn't like that And that was a bit of an issue that we saw with the run game last year, Vince, is they'd have some wrinkles early that worked. Remember against Clemson, they're running some of that get pin and pull stuff that worked early. Audrick's got like 82 yards at half, and then that's pretty much like what he finished with because they made some adjustments and that stuff wasn't there anymore. And you didn't they figured it out. Now we're effed. That's something that's going to have to get better. It's going to have to get a lot better. And I don't know who that's on, but you're going to have to be able to go into some more games with, yes, it's good that you have these run game wrinkles, but you've got to have some stuff that starts kind of jerking with these opponents where their eye discipline has to be on point. And if it's not, then, okay, they didn't move at all to those last 2 jet motions. So you know what we're going to do this time? We're going to go right back to that. We're going to run a jet or something out of it. This is a defense that I thought was very aggressive and was prone to giving up the big plays, which we saw at times. There was a lot more Notre Dame could have done for that. Now, here's the thing, Vince. I've had somebody say this to me, and I agree with this, and I said this to you, and you agreed with me as well. I believe that after the fumble, and then I think it was like a series later when Riley lands on the ball and that guy hits him and they don't call it a late hit, I don't think Riley was necessarily quite right after that, throwing the ball. And I think between that and the fumble, I think the offensive coaching staff said, hey, we're not going to do anything that's going to cost us or
it's going to jeopardize.
And that's fine. You can still run the football.
Yes. Right.
But there's some different things you can do running the football to pop one. And so that was kind of my thing. Definitely my thing of okay, you want to reduce your receivers are playing bad. Your offensive line pass pro was awful. And your quarterback's not comfortable because of it. Okay, cool. We're going to run the ball a lot. I get it. But, coach, maybe we could do this. Maybe we could do that to try to at least get them thinking and moving, and maybe we can catch one. You know what I mean? And that's kind of what I would have liked to see a little bit more of, Vince, is some of that stuff. So I'm going to give them a minus for mixing up the run game. Again, early wrinkles were nice, but they never did anything outside of those early wrinkles.
Sure. Next one was very interesting. And it's one that I don't know that you've had in here before because it's kind of an offshoot of start early, start quick or whatever, but it was get Riley Leonard going early. And I thought that they tried to do that last week and he just missed some of those layups that we talked about, right? They did try to do something to get him going. They tried to, but it didn't quite work. This time, though, I thought they did make a concerted effort to get him going early. They ran him. They threw him. He would have been 6 for 6 on the first drive if it wasn't for the drop. I mean, so he ended up being 5 of 6 on the first drive. I know he ran the ball on the first drive. I don't have the details in front of me as far as how many times, but I know he was an integral part of that first drive that was poetry, basically getting that first touchdown. I thought they did a pretty good job of getting Riley Leonard going early in this game, both through the air and on the ground. And I think we've learned that they do have to get him going on the ground as well as through the air. And I think they did a good job of both early on in this game.
This is a plus for me, Vince, because the point is you nailed the point, which is it's not just about getting Riley going with some early throws. I pointed out, like, when you look at Riley's success, he started throwing the ball better after they gave him a couple designed runs. And that's just for you. It's about knowing your quarterback, right? You got to know your 100%. Quarterback. What is he comfortable with? So they come out first play of the game. They throw a little quick screen. All right, easy throw. He doesn't mess that one up. Next play, quarterback counter. Next play, inside zone, and there's almost always a read built into that. Next play action pass with an over route. He ends up stepping in the pocket, finding Jaden Greathouse. He would have had Jaden Greathouse open either way. Then they go another inside zone, which always has a read built into it. And then that kind of got you going a little bit. And then you end the drive with back-to-back runs from the quarterback. And so you end up giving him 3 design carries on the opening drive, some quick throws that got him into rhythm. And I thought he was comfortable at that point in time. And then you come out your next series and, you run quarterback counter on the first play. You run back-to-back inside zones after that. 16-yard run by Jadarian Price, a gain of 0. It's 2nd and 10. And then you run the drop back that gets, the all verts, and he finds Jaden Greathouse, and boom, it's over the top. You third drive, first play, quarterback run. So I thought they did a great job of getting him going early, and I would have been very curious to see if his play would have continued that way if he doesn't get the wind knocked out of him and get his ribs jacked up. Like he wasn't, you could tell he was noticeably in pain the rest of the game. And even on that throw to Jaden Harrison in the fourth quarter, like it was a great read. It was a great time. You could tell he was aiming that a lot more than he did that early seam route to Jaden Greathouse. And so you don't know, but you just wonder, how did that affect his play? But by that point in time, it was 21-7. And so, you talk about getting him going early, which is the point. They did that, and it helped them jump out to a 21-7 lead. So I give him a check. I give him a check for this one. I mean, again, he was good early. He wasn't great early. He was good.
Right. But they got him going early. Like he looked more comfortable in this game. I would even say either prior to the quote-unquote injury or even out, he looked more comfortable in this game to me than he's looked all season. And that's good. He's progressing. I mean, that's what everybody needed to see. And I think a lot of that had to do with the way they started things off. I really do. And so that I give this one a plus.
Yeah.
For me. All right. So
even above the check, you give it a plus?
Okay. I give it a plus. I think they did a good job of getting him going early, and he responded as well. So it's a two-pronged thing.
I dig that.
I give it a plus. I give it a plus. I realize there are some spots where he could have played better.
You're
That's
good,
cool,
man. I just wanted to make sure we were on the same page.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not pushing back on it. I dig it, right? I mean, it's I'm not going to talk you off of it. I just was like, oh, so you're going plus, not just a check? Like, okay, cool. I
liked it.
Because again, Vince, 21 points in the first 3 possessions.
Right.
The quarterback made a lot of plays on it. I mean, I get it. I might be a little bit over harder grader today, but
it's okay.
I dig it. Yeah. I think your points are valid.
Yeah. Situational success is our next key.
That's right.
I'm saying it in here. Don't worry.
Yes, I get you.
Situational success. 3rd down, red zone. In this case, 4th down, I think would also apply in this particular game because they did go for it 3 times on 4th down.
It's
situational success.
Situational football it encompasses a lot of things that I thought were going to be important.
Right.
It's 3rd down offense. It's 4th down offense. It's red zone offense. It's 2-minute drill. It's 4-minute drill. And we didn't talk about this going in, but if you were to ask me what situational football entails, it also includes sudden change. Yeah. And that situation, you practice that on your situational day, sudden change, right? Sudden change is your defense just got you the ball. What are you going to do with it? And this was a mixed bag, Vince, to be honest with you. And so I've said in the past, like check plus. This is the first time I'm ever going to give a check minus.
Yeah.
Because there's parts of this that I thought were really good and factored into the win, right? 4th down offense was huge. We talk about that opening drive. You had to convert a 4th down on that drive. You had to convert a 4th down by throwing on a sprint out to the left, something that Riley missed, I think, a couple times in the last couple of games. Missed badly to Mitchell.
In that regard, that was kind of a ballsy call, to be honest with you.
Yes, it was. And Riley nailed it. Great route by Jaden Thomas, by the way.
Sure.
It wasn't even a pivot. It was just, you got to win. Okay, for all of you fans at home that want to know when I use the word, you've got to win. Go watch Jaden. There was no technique there. It was just, I got to figure out how to get stemmed on this guy and beat him outside. And it was like dance and then like leaned on him and then snapped it off. It was a great route by Jaden Thomas. Got himself separation. Boom. 1st down. Riley nailed it. So you converted that 4th down. You converted a 4th down later in the game, Vince, and I know that you ended up not getting the second 4th down on that drive, but by getting the first 4th down, I believe they took another 1.5 to 2 minutes off of the clock, if I remember correctly, with that drive. So I could be wrong on that, but no, I'm right. You had that play that first 4th down ran at the 1:02 mark of the 3rd quarter. And that drive ended at Louisville took over at the 13:29 mark. So you ran over 2.5 minutes off the clock and moved the ball down, another 7 or so yards, but you ran another 2.5 minutes off the clock in the second half by getting the first 4th down, which isn't great, but it's a good step. So I thought 4th down was good. 3rd down, you went 2 of 10, and it was awful. Just third down offense was a mess.
It's not good.
Red zone offense, 2 red zone trips, 2 touchdowns plus. You know, I mean, you can only score touchdowns in the red zone on the trips you get in the red zone. You know, you're not going to fault them for having 2 30-plus yard touchdown passes, right? Which I had a stat today I talked about. You know, said, well, Notre Dame's offense got to do a better job getting in the red zone more, and that is true. That is certainly true. But 11 of their 21 touchdowns this year have been over 20-yard gains. And then another one of their 21 touchdowns was a defensive touchdown. Now, again, there's a lot of opportunities for the offense to get more red zone trips, right?
Sure.
But it's both of those things factor into that. And so,
they pass through the red zone on the way to the end zone. So, you know.
Sure. Right.
No, but I know what you're saying.
They passed go. They didn't land on go, right?
Right, exactly.
And so you look at that, Vince, and that part was very good. 2-minute offense. We didn't really see them run 2-minute offense, but I felt like their sudden change offense was pretty good. Sudden change can, you know, and hey, you need to answer. You know, that's kind of part of situational football. Do you answer the other team scores? And they did a pretty good job of that. So
I think
some things I give them a check for, some things I give them a -4, Vince. So I kind of go, because you had the first, you talk about answering situational football, right? Sudden change. Okay, or situational thing where you've got to answer
a score. Yeah,
your special teams gives up you're getting ready to go on the field. You're getting ready to take the ball. Your kick return team fumbles. They recover. Oh shoot, we got to step back. Defense goes out there. I think 3 plays, gives up a touchdown.
Yep,
that's kind of sudden change. And what do you respond with? 75 yards, 12 plays, touchdown.
6
your
minutes
defense
off the clock.
forces a fumble. Yeah. First play, you just scored to make it 7-0. Defense first play. Force fumble, you got to get the ball back. You go down, touchdown drive, right? I think next possession, special teams gives you a short field. You go out there, you get 7 out of that. And so, that and then late in the game, fourth quarter, they score to make it a 1-touchdown game. Notre Dame's very next drive, they go down the field and score a touchdown. And I felt like that was evidence to me that my belief that they kind of said, hey, we need to get out of this and not give them chances was that drive.
Because then when they needed to score, they
open it up a little bit. Yeah, right. And not just that they did, but they did some stuff where like they had some things that they were sitting on to, you know, get them there. So, I mean, you talk about the bootleg, the right before the slot, you had the slot fade, you had the little read zone Y under bootleg to again, because you're thinking, okay, Riley's rolling right again. He's rolling right again. And then 3 plays later, you come back with that throw. And you had the motion slot fade for the big game. They knew they could kind of get that with the motion. Why didn't they do that sooner to put the game away? Because I don't think they wanted to take a chance of exposing Riley to a big hit. That time he caught it, dropped back, threw it, and still got pressured. You know what I mean? So
right.
And then you had to be sitting on that screen all day because I talked about it last week before the show. I said, look, this is going to be there.
I mean, they've been doing that sprint out like
3 weeks.
Yes.
I mean, well, including this game, it was this game. You know, so 3 games, including that game.
Yes.
And, you know, you're sitting on that call. What's a great time to do it? Okay, let's go put this game away. They're trying to get a stop. They're trying to make a play.
They need to
give
their ears back.
Ball back. They're exactly, Vince. They're pinning their ears back. Now's a great time to go do it. And they went and did it. So, you know, that was that part. So again, there were some things that were good, some things that were not good. Overall, I give it a check minus. If that's I think
that's fair though. No, I think that's fair though, because
third down. If you just change third down, Vince, this is a different ball game. It's not a close one. Like your failure there made this a much closer game than it should have been.
Correct.
Your inability to move the chains on third down made this game closer than it even should have been and could have been. And that part's got to get better. And you know, you've played 5 games now, and your third down offense has been really bad in 3 of those 5 games. That's not good. The 2 best defenses you've played all year, Texas A&M and Louisville, you've gone 4 of 23 on third down. Not good. Got to get fixed. Yeah. So that's kind of where I'm at. Check minus. There's some things they did really well and some things I just didn't think they did a good enough job with.
That's going to do it for our keys to victory offensively revisited. And make sure you hit that like button, that subscribe button, that notification bell, share with your family and friends. And of course, jump on the boards.irishbreakdown.com. It's like a new world over there on the boards. And I invite everyone to head on over there. because there is some really good conversation going on there. There may be a video being posted later by me that I somewhat promised in the last show. So you never know. It's a bye week and have some fun with it. So we might have to throw that up there. But you're never going to be able to see it unless you're on the boards, boards.irishbreakdown.com. Brian, let's jump into our defensive keys to victory revisited. And we've got a few that we want to get into here. And the first one was control the interior. And that has been a bit of a struggle the first few games of the season, and which is kind of a surprising struggle considering who came back. And, you had some veteran leadership in there, and they just really haven't controlled the game in the middle up to this point. So your thoughts on how they did after looking at the film against Louisville?
Vince, I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on this because I'm back and forth on this one.
That's fair.
Part of me wants to go minus because, they did have some pushback and they ran for a decent amount of yards. But when you break the film down, I don't know that the interior of the defensive line was as much of the problem as it was some running back fits. And then also just they had better numbers in the box because you were willing to give them better numbers in the box because you were, like I talked about, I'm more confident that my read of that game was correct. That Al Golden was basically kind of trying to dare them into running the football because it meant that you weren't going to throw it as much and take as many shots. I'm more confident in that because there were just things where it's like, I know Al Golden's a smart guy, and I know he knows they're going to check to a run against that look. I was calling it from the box, and I know Jeff Brom's a smarter offensive coach than I am. I like to think that I'm a pretty good offensive coach. I had a lot of success coaching football. I'm not even in the same stratosphere as Jeff Brom when it comes to offensive mind. Right? I'm seeing it. I know he's seeing it, and I know his brother's seeing it, who's his OC. And it's kind of like, okay, cool. Give it to one of those running backs because that guy's not going to beat us. Number one could, right? Colin Lacey could. Maybe your tight end can, but those guys aren't. And so I was more convinced by that. And I actually looked back and looked at it, Vince, and when I graded the film, and I want to get your thoughts on this, I actually thought the interior of the defensive line played better on the rewatch than I thought they did live. There was a couple misfits for the linebacker level. There were some misses, I thought at the safety level, there were some just pure missed tackles. They run a quick pitch. Xavier Watts is standing right there. He misses a tackle, and Jalen Sneed misses a tackle. So some of those things, there were some mistakes at the second and third level that led to a couple of those big runs. There were a couple times, I didn't think Jason Onye got off of a block one time on a cutback that I thought he could have maybe got off to and limited that run. But I thought Riley Mills had his best game of the year. He wasn't dominant, but he was good. There was a play where he comes off, he rocks the guard back, throws him, comes off, and gets to the football. We haven't seen him do that all year. He did that 3-4 times on Saturday. Howard Cross had a couple plays where he got driven off, but overall I thought this was Howard's most consistent game of the season. I thought he was very active. He played with a much better motor. I thought Donovan Heinisch might have had his most physical game of his career, Vince. I thought Donnie Heinisch battled on Saturday.
He battles every week, but I think he had even more success.
He always plays hard.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about like he was getting after it. Like he was getting low. He was driving up into their chest. You maybe the way you said it's better. It's not that he battled. This was his most successful game. Right. But I thought he competed his booty off in that game and played really well. Limited the numbers of times he got knocked back. I thought he was very stout. Onye was good. He was a little bit inconsistent at times, but overall he was pretty good. And if you'd had a couple better run fits at the linebacker level, one of their 43-yard runs, I mean, you talk about the success they had with their 43-yard run. I wasn't on the interior of the D line. That was either on a linebacker or an edge. I don't know if that was Oben or Kingston that was at fault, one of those two. And I only say that because I don't know what the call was.
Right.
Now, my thought is that it was on Kingston because
Oben came down so hard. I agree with you. Because he came down, he made the tackle on the
Kingston keyed on the back. And I think he ran with the back instead of keying, the backs. And maybe he wasn't prepared for that. I don't think that was Oben's fault. I think it was Kingston's fault, but I don't want to say that for sure because I don't know what the call was.
Sure.
Right? And great hustle on that play by Leonard Moore, by the way, and great hustle on that play by Jaden Alsbury. Because Jaden was the front side Mike. He was the Mike on that play, the way that they were lined up. Now, I mean, he probably was the Will, but the way they were lined up, he was kind of in a Mike, meaning he was kind of play side of the run.
Yeah.
Kingston was backside. And Jaden crashed the line at the snap, Vince. So he crashes the line, takes on a guard, sees the quarterback scrambling, and hustles back and is there to get the ball. Because Leonard and Xavier had no chance to recover that fumble. If a Louisville guy was hustling down the field and Jaden Alsbury wasn't, they might recover that fumble because Jaden Alsbury was hustling backside or coming backside. He ends up getting there and sees the ball and jumps on it. That was a huge moment in the game. I thought overall, and then you look at the pressures from the game, Vince. I'm just giving you Pro Football Focus numbers. I didn't think they had a ton of wins to the point where they were getting like a bunch of hits on the quarterback, but I thought they were getting a really good push. I thought Tyler Shuck threw a lot of balls off of his back foot in the game. And you look at the total
pressures. Some of them are really good. But
yeah. They have the interior defensive Pro Football Focus, and I would actually have added a couple, just my opinion. But Pro Football Focus has the interior defensive line as having 11 pressures in this game against Louisville. Now, only 1-2 hits on the quarterback, but 11. They had Onye had one and Mills had one, but 11 pressures right up the middle in the face of almost a third of the drops. They had an interior pressure from a defensive lineman.
Well, and I don't know if you saw Pro Football Focus, they tweeted out that Notre Dame's interior defensive line versus Louisville. Well, it had an 84.5 pass rush grade, which is first in college football, and 18 pass rush wins, which is first in college football.
Because a win doesn't always result in a pressure.
In a pressure. But look,
that fits with what we saw on film, Vince.
Exactly.
That tracks with what we saw on film.
100%.
And it wasn't just Riley had the game of his career, or Howard had an All-American game, or Onye had a breakout, or Donovan had the best game of his career. It was all of them.
It was all of them.
And I think they needed it. They needed that.
Yes. As a group, they needed it. Agreed.
Right. And that's why I think Louisville also had a lot of 5-yard runs and not a lot of 20-yard runs.
Yeah.
Because they were having to make cuts behind the line because the defensive line wasn't getting getting pushed back the way that they like. And there was one play where like Howard got knocked back, but on that particular play, Riley threw the guard off of him and made a tackle for a 2-yard gain. Like we hadn't seen that in the past. In the past, that's an 8-yard gain.
Right, correct.
Right? Well, now it's a 2-yard gain.
Right.
And there was a time Onye did that. There was a time where I thought the 3 technique got sealed inside, but Donnie Heinisch shot so hard through the A gap that the running back just kind of ran into the line.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, so I give this I'll give it a plus. I'll give it a plus. I thought they played really, really well. I'll give it a plus.
And
they bounced back because they weren't playing well.
Well,
so that adds to it as well. They needed them to step up in this big moment, and they did. That gives them extra bonus points for me.
I get you. You kind of grade on a curve just a little bit because of what they had done before. So I understand where you're coming from. I'm a little more. I expected more at the beginning of the season than I was getting from them, and now I'm starting to see it. But I need to see it more and more consistently.
Sure.
So I'm in the check range for this.
Yeah.
I'm just not ready to go plus yet.
Big picture, agree with you.
Yeah,
for this game, like if they had played all year like they are in this game, we'd be saying they're living up to what the high expectations we had for them.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like if you could take the bad taste of your mouth out of the first 4 games,
right?
And this is how they always were. I think we'd be talking plus. But I think if you're going to grade them on a whole, I get that.
Okay,
I get that.
Cool.
I get that.
Next defensive key to victory was be disciplined. And there were definitely some times where the defense was not disciplined in this game. But your overall thoughts on the discipline of the defense?
Overall, I'm going to give them a check on this one, to be honest with you. And the reason I'm going to give them a check is because there was definitely some big mistakes in this game that were lack of discipline mistakes from, not reading the read zone properly and giving up the 43-yard gain, right?
Because that could have been a disaster.
2 blown coverages on the first drive and touchdowns. You turned the guy loose on the second touchdown pass. There were some other times you had some bad run fits that resulted in big plays. You know, you had your All-American safety who otherwise played brilliantly, but had that one really bad missed tackle where he didn't break down and bring that guy down in space. You had a lot of stuff like that going on. And for the most part, those mistakes were made by young players. The exception of the one missed tackle by Xavier, who more than made up for that later with that brilliant interception. The mistakes were made by the younger players in this game. Kingston, you know, giving up a seam, Drake having a bad misfit, not getting out on emotion, which is as much of a scheme problem as anything, or a preparation problem as anything. You know, Drake had an early misfit. Outside of that, he was brilliant. I mean, so you had some of those plays, Vince, that you have to say, well, those are minuses, man. Those are definitely minuses. But, and then there's another big one from Jordan Clark where he headbutts a guy. And listen, I don't want to hear I understand. Guy spit in his face. I get it. Why? Look, if you've ever played college football, you've been spit in the face before. Look, and it's disrespectful. And if you did it to me in person, you're getting punched.
It's different.
You're getting punched. I get it.
Assault.
But there's a lot of things that if you did to me in person that you did to me if you just came up behind me in person and blindsided me when I'm holding my drink, you're going to get knocked the F out. If you did that in the game, my left tackle blew his assignment and you're doing your job.
Right.
Right? So don't justify that. It's disrespectful. You say, hey man, me and you, we're going to meet out in the parking lot after this thing is over with. But in the middle of the game, you can't make those mistakes.
That was a bad moment.
You can't do it. You get in his face, you let him know, blah, blah, blah. You tell him, you let him know this isn't going to fly. And the next play, within the whistle, you knock him the F out within the whistle. You don't headbutt a guy because here's the thing. Now, your attempt to recover your pride, which again, I understand. There's not a whole lot of things dudes can do to you more disrespectful than spitting in your face. Amen to that. But you now, to get your pride back, to respond to your, how you feel you were come at, and you now hurt your entire team.
Correct.
Put him in a tough spot.
Put him in a tough spot.
And so again, if somebody did that to me in person, I'd fight them. Okay, yeah. If somebody came up and stalked blocked me at the restaurant, we're going to have some problems. You know what I mean? If somebody came off and crack blocked me at the restaurant, we're going to have some problems.
I just have these
Everything you
now.
do on the football, if somebody just grabbed their napkin and threw it across the room at me, hit me right in the chest, we're going to have a problem. I'm just throwing you a pass. I don't know you. Don't throw your biscuits at me anymore. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of things that you can do in life that if you did it on a football field, it's two different reactions. You know what I'm saying? So I get it. I'd be pissed off too. I have no problem with Jordan being pissed off. I have no problem with Jordan getting some payback. But you get payback the way every other football player for 100 years has done, in between the whistle, in a way that you're not going to get flagged to where you now hurt your entire team. Because you had them backed up inside the 15-yard line, and that gave them some big room.
It gave them new life because wasn't that third down?
It was going to be 2nd and 8. I think it was a first down.
Is that what it was? Okay.
It was after quick 2-yard run. And so look, here's the reality of it. It's like some people in the chat, like they're just not listening to me.
No.
Right? The point is, if you've ever actually played football competitive level, you've been punched in the gonads, you've had your ankles twisted, you've been punched in the ribs, or maybe this is just me, Vince. You've been punched in the ribs, you've been spit on. Dudes will pee on you in the middle of a football game. That's a thing, y'all.
Yeah, it is.
Ask anyone that's played in the NFL in the last 20 years. It's ridiculous, the stuff but they're trying to get you to retaliate.
To do exactly what he did.
Point.
Yes.
And you retaliate the right way.
Right.
Defensive lineman punches you in the nuts when you're under the huddle. You know what you do the very next play? You bury him. Bury him within the whistle. Those type of mistakes will get you beat. Just like the bad fits and so there was a lot of that stuff in this game, Vince, where I thought was undisciplined on defense. However, overall, the course of the entire game, I thought they did a lot of really good things.
Sure.
A lot of really good things in regard to, like, there was the sprint out where Jalen Steed had the sack. Right? Like, if you go watch, and I actually think it was Jordan Clark on this particular play as well. No, it was a later one. But the defense, the secondary just stayed on the receivers. The quarterback was trying to bait them to come up, and they're like, nope, we're not doing it. There was another play early where they were running like a kind of a flood concept, and Jordan Clark drops underneath the outcut. And as soon as the quarterback takes his eyes off he was trying to bait Jordan Clark to come low, and Jordan didn't bite on it. But so he stayed back, and as soon as he started to throw shallow, Jordan drives on it and blows the dude up.
Yeah,
like that's discipline. That's
Jordan.
Don't fall for what he's trying.
Yeah.
That's what's such a bummer about that one mistake. Because outside of that, he had a phenomenal football game.
Best game he's had in a Notre Dame uniform, man. Game. He played so well, and I hate the fact that this extracurricular play overshadows the way he played in this game. Because
I don't think it overshadows it. I don't think it overshadows it. It doesn't justify what he did on that play.
Right. It's not overshadows. Not the right word. It tarnishes a little bit.
Yeah, like, a little bit.
It does. So, because Dad would be on Twitter saying what a great game he played, as opposed to making an excuse like that.
Yeah, he did say what kind of great game he played, but to your point, his dad has to explain away why that happened. And part of the reason I think Jordan did that is you look at his dad's response and you're like, okay, this is exactly now. In Ryan Clark's defense, and I don't necessarily love to do this. I don't agree with a lot of things Ryan Clark says. I respect that he's open and honest with his opinions, and I respect for what he does, but we just don't agree a lot. But we don't know that Ryan Clark's private message to his son was the same as his public one.
That's fair.
You know what I mean? Like sometimes, like you may say, "Hey, listen, I'm going to defend my players and my team publicly to the hilt. In the locker room, we're going to have a different conversation."
Sure.
Right? We'll go into that press conference to defend my quarterback to the hilt, but he's not going to like the one-on-one he and I are going to have in my office when we're watching film the next day.
Oh yeah.
Right. So that I would hope that was kind of what happened with Ryan Clark and Jordan, which is publicly you defend your son, because like I said, what happened to him is one of the most egregious things you can do to another man. And you know me, Vince, I'm a big fan of masculinity in the proper form is a very good thing. I'm not toxic masculine. No. We need more masculine in this country. There are certain things that you do where just by being a man, some retribution is, if you didn't retaliate at all, if you just let that man do that to you, I might have pulled your man card a little bit. Mm-hmm. But there's a right and a wrong way to retaliate. And that's the lesson that I would have for Jordan Clark. I wouldn't be like, hey man, you got to take it. You just got to take it.
You got to take it.
Guys, you got to take it. No. I'm like, hey man, here's what you do. Next play, it's a run play. You run up and you not, like within the rules, knock him out. You know what I mean? Like drill him. He's coming to, block you. Go at right at his, you know what I mean? Like there's ways to get it back. And there's ways to say, you want to get a guy back. This is the best way to do it. Because that receiver wasn't hurt, but he's got a freaking helmet on. He wasn't hurt at all by Jordan Clark headbutt him. He got no retaliation to that guy. All the punishment was on Jordan. He got a 15-yard penalty. You think that guy was like hurt? No, he's got a freaking helmet on. You know what I mean? You could have got him back in other ways. And that's my point. And the fact that he did that is we're sitting there talking about that instead of, holy crap, Jordan Clark played a phenomenal game. I might have given him player of the game if he didn't have that penalty. He was one of my runners up, but I might have given him player of the game if he didn't have the penalty. Because it wasn't just the plays he made. And he had one coverage mistake on that one wheel route where him and Junior were both playing the running back swing, and that guy snuck behind him on a wheel. I thought that Jordan's has to sink underneath that. That's going to happen when you're playing against a Jeff Brom team. He's going to have a couple of plays. He's just going to get you. You know, we'd be talking, but it was also about getting guys lined up. As he's running across, making sure he's communicating to. I mean, he just played an excellent game. An excellent game. And I think that's my thing with the defense is, yes, there was mistakes and things like that. Some of it was by Louisville. Some of it was, like the one mistake that I think Drake Bowen, I thought had in coverages, he's got to get out more. But it was a great play call, man. It's like Jeff Brom stealing from Moan Hart. He put a receiver at running back and motioned a receiver out to away from the corners because they had, and then so Drake's now got to go cover this guy. And it's a great play call. I promise you that's not something that Notre Dame prepared for. Their first touchdown, they're running a running back through the line into the corner of the end zone. Does Boubacar have them? Does Kaiser have them? There's some uncertainty. That's a pretty good play call and a tendency breaker from Louisville. So when you play Jeff Brom, some of those things are going to happen. Right. But when you tie it into the next key, Vince, I think the fact these 3 and 4 kind of went together, and the fact that for the most part you limited the big plays, which is key number 4. This is a team that came in, and in 3 games, Vince, they had 12 plays of 30 yards or more. And I think they only had 2 in this game. Right?
Am I correct on that? 1 pass and 1 run. And one of those, and the 1 run obviously ended with a fumble.
Right. And I'll say this, the 1 pass was, I'm trying to think what play that was. It was to Colin Lacey. I was trying to remember
34, 34
yard second half of the game.
3rd and 7, 3rd quarter, 8 minutes and 40 seconds to go.
I don't remember that play. But like the Ja'Cory Brooks had a 27-yard gain on Benjamin Morrison. To me, that should have been a penalty on the offense. I thought live Benjamin just got beat. I thought, and you and I had 2 different thoughts. I thought Benjamin did a poor job because I was actually watching him from the box, and he went to jam and he kind of stumbled and fell down, and Ja'Cory Brooks ran him. You looked at him later than I did. You went to him as the play was going on, and it looked like he was in cover 2 trail mode. Right, and there was no safety coming over top. So then you're thinking blown assignment by Benjamin because there was only 1 high safety. There's no way that could have been a cover 2.
Right.
But if you go back and watch the TV copy, this is one of the few times the TV, because I actually looked at it all in 2010. I was like, that doesn't look right. And then when you go watch the TV copy, Ja'Cory Brooks basically grabs him either by the helmet or by his upper shoulder pads and swings him down and then gets free. That is a offensive penalty. You can't do that. Can't grab a guy by his helmet or his shoulders and throw him down. That's an offensive penalty, in my opinion. Should have absolutely been. And you can look at Benjamin after the plays, like looking at the ref, like, you know what I mean? Like, what the heck? And just a little side note, that's a dirty football team.
Yeah, it was.
That is a dirty football team, Louisville.
No doubt.
And when you watch the All-22, Vince, you see a lot of stuff happening on film. You're like, dude, that's a dirty football team. And but you know what the refs did for the most part? They let them play. And Notre Dame gave it right back to them legally, with the exception of 1 play. And that's why they limited the big plays. I mean, a team that was averaging 4 plays of 30 yards or more per game had 2 of them in this game. And on one of those 2, they lost the ball. You put those 2 things together, Vince, and you say you can't do that to this defense without a somewhat of a pretty high level of discipline, even though we can point to a mistake here, point to a mistake there. Overall, it's a pretty darn good performance. Right. Pretty darn good performance from the Notre Dame defense. And so I give them those last 2, I give them pretty high marks on, Vince.
Yeah,
I do. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I agree with you. The limits of big plays,
especially when you consider how young Notre Dame was on defense for most of that game at linebacker. Because Kaiser, your leader on the second level, did not play the entire second half because of an injury.
Right.
So, sorry, go ahead.
No doubt. No, I thought, going into this, limiting the big plays was going to be like my number 1 key to victory for Notre Dame. Like that, going into it based on all the big plays that Louisville has had up to this point, considering the way that Jeff Brom can scheme guys open into big plays and all of that, limiting the big plays was my number 1 thing that they had to do. They had to get it right if they were going to win this game. And I give them a plus on that. Like, I thought that they did a fantastic job of limiting the big plays. Some of those plays, some of those pass plays, like the one-handed catch, and some of them were just there's no way you can even defend that. Like, I don't even put that on the defense because they were in good position. They were playing good defense. Those guys just made a play. You know what I mean? And even the touchdown.
That was that other big play, Vince. I went back and looked at it. It was that one-handed one-handed. You're like, what do you that's what you forced them to do, though. You forced them to either cheat or make ridiculous plays to beat you. And even the last touchdown, which was not a 30-yard gain, the touchdown to Ja'Cory Brooks, that was a phenomenal ball and a phenomenal catch against pretty darn good coverage.
Right. Yeah.
And we said before the game, they're going to get some
Sure.
You're not going to keep them from no plays of under
Not
30,
possible.
but you got to make them
Right.
work for it. And that's exactly what the Notre Dame defense did in this game.
Well, and then I also want to highlight the sidearm throw as Drake Bowen was, putting his entire body weight on the quarterback. I mean, that was just
about the
touchdown. An amazing play. Yeah, the touchdown.
Right.
Like that was.
You turned the guy loose, but it was way behind the play, and it required him to just make a ridiculously good throw.
So I mean, look, that ended up being a big play because it was a touchdown, obviously, and okay, fine. But overall, I give this defense a plus on the big plays. I thought they did a fantastic job.
Yeah. I give him a check on the discipline, a plus on the limiting big plays.
Okay, cool. I'm there. I'm there with you.
Yeah.
Yep. I'm right there. The last one for the defense was defend the middle of the field. I thought outside of the one play that KVA gave up, over on the seam, I'm trying to remember this. Everything else was pretty much on the outside. So I feel like they defended the middle in the pass game anyway. I thought they defended the middle of the field pretty darn well.
I agree. I mean, and you had that. It was a 27-yard gain to the tight end on that seam play.
Right.
But outside of that, you had the outside touchdown catch. You had the outside one-handed catch. You had the one deep ball that they beat Benjamin Morrison on where, again, that should have been offensive pass interference because that guy got open, just was not getting that open against Benjamin. Right. You defended some other deep balls very well. And then the big drop over the middle, that they had two drops over the middle. One was lucky because he wasn't thrown to that guy. The play to the tight end, he was not thrown to the tight end.
Not
thrown to the tight end. The other one was Benjamin had a bad close on a dig route, and the guy dropped it, and then Xavier picked it. But if that guy catches that ball, Xavier's going to light him up because he was right there. He was going to light him up. So, yeah, he'd have caught it, but it's like a 14-yard gain, and he gets drilled. And that's assuming he holds on to the ball if Xavier lights him up.
Right.
But he drops it, goes right into Xavier's hands, you return it back. So, I mean, again, you're going to have some of those plays, Vince, where they're going to catch some. But the fact that you limited Louisville the way that you did was impressive. I mean, it was really impressive. I mean, this is a team that came in with a very, high-octane pass offense that I believe was averaging – I think they were averaging close to like 10 yards per pass attempt coming into this game, Vince. I think they were over 10 yards per pass. I'm actually going to go look this up, but I believe coming into the game that Louisville, and I know that and the thing is too, is their best yards per attempt game of the season was not against at Austin Peay. It was not against Jacksonville State. It was against Georgia Tech. And so, they went for 14.2 against Georgia Tech yards per pass attempt, Vince. So let me just go find my stacking up. Here we go. So Louisville pass offense, they came into this game averaging 10.5 yards per attempt and 14.7 yards per completion. Against Notre Dame, they averaged 6.4 yards per attempt and only 11 yards per completion, which is an okay number, but not a great number. And especially when you consider that they had to cheat on one play to get a 20-plus yard game, and they had to have a ridiculous diving catch for another one. That's pretty darn good performance.
Yeah.
It's pretty darn good performance, in my opinion, from your defense when it comes to control. And a lot of that is because you did control the middle of the field. What is the lowest percentage throw to make is the deep outside balls is one of the lower percentages to make. They did a great job of we'll get into the mix-up coverage, but they did a really nice job. I thought the linebackers did a pretty good job. But here's another reason why. This goes back to point number one. You want to know another reason why they did well over the middle of the field? It's hard to throw over the middle of the field when you're throwing off your back foot because the interior of the defensive line is in your face the whole game. Right. As a former quarterback, it is super hard to step into throws over the middle or see what's happening over the middle when D tackles are coming right in your face. Really hard because there are no passing lanes. And so, I mean, I give this check plus, honestly, Vince, because like you said, outside of the one play up the seam, you did a pretty darn good job of shutting down the middle of the field against a coach who really likes attacking the middle of the field to pass game.
Yep.
So I give him a check plus for this one, if not a plus. If I had to pick one, I'd go plus
for me. Yeah, I'm in the plus category. And Sean and I were talking about the stats a little bit, in the last show earlier today, and he was wearing a shirt that said, stats are for losers or something like that. And it was funny because Look, if you just look at the stats of this game, right? Louisville put up some decent offensive stats, totals, I should say. They're totals. But you have to also remember, it took them 41 pass attempts to get 240 plus yards of offense.
264.
Or 264, excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
41 pass attempts to do that. He's only 59% completion percentage. Like, he had to work to get those totals, right? I mean,
coming into the game, Vince, his lowest completion percentage was 65.7. His lowest yards per attempt was the opener against Austin Peay, where he completed 8.2, and he completed 79.4% of his throws in that game.
Yeah. So, I mean, he had to work to get those numbers, and Notre Dame made him work.
Lowest yardage output of the season, 264. Highest passing attempts in a game so far this season.
So there you go. So, I mean, that just tells you right there that the Notre Dame secondary was on lock in this game. So that's going to do it for our defensive keys to victory revisited. Stick around. We still got some more coming. But in the meantime, make sure you hit that like button, that subscribe button, that notification bell. Share with your family and friends. And, of course, jump on the boards.irishbreakdown.com. Lots of good stuff over there. You're not going to want to miss it. I believe there are going to be some breakdowns put up there, some video breakdowns tomorrow. At some point this week. Yep.
Be tomorrow.
Yep. Yeah. That's what I figured. Again, it is a bye week, so things are a little bit more spread out. But, hey, it's still going to come your way.
I am going to do a defensive breakdown this week.
There you go. See,
I'm going to do some coverage stuff to show you.
That's what happens on the bye week, folks. You get a little bit extra, coming your way. So make sure you get over there on the boards.irishbreakdown.com. Next segment, Brian, let's chat about the offense, kind of our takeaways and our key moments offensively in this game. Let's start with the takeaways. Your initial takeaways, watching the film. We can go any direction you want at this point. We can talk about some specific positions. We can talk about the offense as a whole, kind of however you want to go. We'll jump on that wagon and we'll start rolling. Where you want to start with the offensive takeaways from watching the film?
Well, there's a couple. Couple that are just kind of easy to say. I thought this was the most confident that the offense was coming out of the gate, even before they got a couple shorter fields. I mean, that first drive, they looked like a confident football team. I mean, I thought the offensive line was coming off playing hard. I thought they were physical at the outset. They set the tone. And when you watch the film, you can see, look, there were some times in this game where Rocco Spindler had some really rough snaps, and Pat Coogan had some really rough snaps. Sam Pendleton had some really rough snaps. But they battled their butts off for 60 minutes. And I'm going to have some things to say at Irish Breakdown this week on our podcast and then on the board and stuff about the job I think Joe Rudolph is doing. There's some good things and some things I really don't like. But one of the biggest things I said about him coming into the year was I want to see if he can get his line to play hard every week. And so far he has. They haven't always played well. And I don't know that they played well on Saturday, but they played hard. And I just thought that early in the game, at least from a line, running backs, quarterback standpoint, you had a lot of confidence. There's some receivers not playing with much confidence or speed right now. Jaden Thomas is playing with a lot of confidence right now. There's no doubt about that. But I thought overall, they came out, they were confident. I loved the early game plan by Mike Denbrock. I thought they had Louisville on their heels early. I thought that was really impressive. You go back and watch it, and you're just like, okay, Louisville was guessing a lot, or they were just unsure of what was happening.
And that's big after what happened last year.
Yeah, exactly. I like to see a little bit more of that, to be honest with you, in this particular game, Vince. So, when I look at those things, those are obviously aspects of it. But, looking at some of the issues, though, Vince, is there were some issues that I saw in this game that were problems for this game that are also going to be problems moving forward if they don't get addressed. And the biggest one for me is Notre Dame has some major pass protection issues. And the concern is not that, okay, well, if you just go replace this guy with that guy, I thought Anthony Knapp it wasn't very good, but it was still his best pass pro performance of the season so far. Wasn't great, but it was still his best. This issue goes a lot deeper, Vince, to me, than just replacing, a guy. They've got legitimate. They don't know who they're supposed to block way too often in this game, and so there's some schematic pass pro issues that they had in this game. Teams have figured out with Pendleton and Knapp, if you run line games at them, they're going to get confused and you're going to have run throughs. There was a play on I'm trying to remember. It was a quick throw to Bo Collins. They ran just a little quick out cut to Bo. Bo's open. And this is one that you and I sort of agreed to disagree on of whether or not he should have caught it or not. But it's a quick game throw, Vince. He's catching and he's throwing. Riley caught it and he starts to throw it and he gets drilled as he's – that should never happen in a quick game. Now, here's what happened. You had two guys kind of coming off the edge, one in front, one inside of Emil Wagner, one outside of Emil Wagner. In quick game, you should always be taught seal the inside. And then if Riley's got to throw off that, you want to throw off the guy that's furthest away, which is the outside guy. Well, Emil steps out to the outside guy, so the inside guy's got a fast track right to Riley and blows him up. Clearly, there's some sort of protection issue there. They still don't know how to handle long twists, and that's been true all year. These long twists where they will slant and then bring an end around, they'd have no concept of how to pick this up, and they haven't all year. You know what I'm talking about by long twist, Vince? Not so like you've got an end and a tackle and they just do a quick line game. I'm talking about how they'll slant two guys and bring the end all the way around. Yes. Yeah. Notre Dame has no ability to pick that up. They have not. I don't know that they've picked that up once all year. I'm being a bit hyperbolic, but that was an issue in this game too. And then, of course, the tight ends were just at times, look, they had no clue who they were supposed to be.
Oh, man.
Pass, bro. Like, it was brutal.
Tight end blocking was not great at all.
It was brutal. And so that's going to have to get addressed big time. So, yes, there were some snaps where, Rocco got beat on some snaps. That's going to happen against Louisville. Coogan got beat on some snaps. Again, it's going to happen against Louisville. Pendleton had some misses. Emil probably had his worst game at Notre Dame probably so far. He wasn't bad, but it's just probably his worst game. That's going to happen against a D-line like this. You can't then compound that with just guys running through. And I think that's part of the reason we saw the game plan we saw in second quarter, third quarter, because like they were going on the attack, and I felt like after that it was back-to-back plays, Vince, and I'm trying to remember what the other one was, but it was back-to-back plays where Riley just got drilled in the second quarter, and you're just like, okay,
yeah.
Their offense looked way different after that because I just don't think that they had any confidence that the offensive line could pick up the line games, much less handle the one-on-one blocks. And you could tell Riley didn't have a lot of because there was a couple times I thought if he sticks with his read, maybe. But it's like I was trying to explain this to a friend of mine, and this is something that people don't understand that never played the position. And the comment made to me, and it's a totally rational comment. He goes, "Look, the problem that he had with Riley's performance was." Yes, the O-line played bad, but even on plays when he had no pressure, his internal clock was too sped up. And I was like, that's exactly the point. Like, you don't know the plays that they're going to bring pressure or not. Once your internal clock gets sped up, it's just sped up.
Exactly.
Right? And you can't say, well, I think I'm okay on this particular play, so I'll go normal on this one. When you get hit as much and pressured as much as he did, you're just going to be sped up. Now, that doesn't justify everything that Riley did or all the misses that he had. You still got to kind of, okay, you got to figure it out and take advantage of those times you don't have it. But it's hard as a quarterback when you're just constantly getting pressured to be able to say, okay, well, I'm good on this one, so I'll just go ahead and read it out. And there weren't a whole lot of those plays. And that's problematic. So that's something that this staff is going to have to figure out during this bye week, Vince, is you've been having schematic protection issues kind of all year. And the book has been written on how to get after quick line games against your left guard and tackle, long twists, long games to your right side. And Notre Dame constantly misses on those. And if you bring sort of overloads to one side, they get confused on who's supposed to get what. That's kind of the reality of it. So, you got to figure that out. You got to figure some of that stuff out. And then, again, in-game adjustments. Notre Dame's sprint out early was working. Louisville figured out slant inside of it. Slant inside the tackle, outside the guard, and Notre Dame had no adjustment to it. None. And they just kept – then once they got that, they knew how to beat it. Knew how to beat the sprint out. And you had no adjustments. However, I would say one of the adjustments was,
was that screen pass?
Screen.
Yeah, that was right. That was the one. It's a pretty major adjustment.
Right.
But.
From a protection standpoint, there weren't adjustments.
Right.
They had a counter off of that. Hey, they're coming at us hard on sprint out. And something in the chat just said, I know Bub said, I know some were designed sprint outs, but it seemed like he was being chased from his left side a lot. Yes, he's being chased from his left side a lot. That's been true all year. That was also true on sprint outs, but you're okay with that on sprint out. I mean, and that's also partly why you come back to the screen, is because they're crashing hard backside in hopes that if Riley stops to settle and throw, you're going to drill him. So that's got to get fixed, Vince. Like big time's got to get fixed. And you say, well, okay, do more max pro, but the way the running backs are blocking in pass pro, which is not great, and the way the tight ends are blocking in pass pro, which is just downright.
It's just awful.
I mean, I got no other way of saying it. It just was bad. And it's like with Eli Raridan, it looks like there's uncertainty of what to do. With Mitch Evans, it looks like an uncertainty of whether or not I want to try hard in this play. If I'm being honest, I don't know if you came up to the same. I mean, like Trevor texts me, he's like, holy moly, Mitchell Evans, what are you like? You're not. I mean, what's going on? So those things are going to have to get addressed big time in the bye week, and to the point where it's like, hey man, if you can't give me better effort than this,
No, you're absolutely right.
What's my justification for putting you out there?
Well, I mean, I think the bye week, and to your point, Brian, the bye week is going to be, again, it's a well placed bye week at this point in the season with the way things are going. But I think you kind of have to, as Marcus Freeman would say, you got to question everything. You've got to figure out what the problem is. Is it personnel? Is it scheme? Is it, lack of fundamentals and not knowing who to pick up, or is it all of the above? But they've got to figure something out going into this kind of next stretch of the season, this next 3-game stretch, right? And then they'll be able to take it back and kind of figure things out again. That's fine. But hopefully at that point, you're building on what is working at that point. And I realize they're dealing with a lot of injuries on the offensive line. I get it. I totally understand that. But that's not an overall excuse. It's a reason, but it's not an excuse.
Pro guy so far is a guy that's been a day one starter. Now, again, I know Jagus got hurt, but that was like week 1 of fall camp.
Right. Yes.
So like you can somewhat understand, Coogan having some I mean, to your point, but like I thought the guy that was probably the worst in pass pro on Saturday was the right side. I mean, Emil, like I said, struggled on Saturday. Well, he's a day one starter. I mean, and again, he's going to have days like that. I'm not banging on Emil. I'm not even thinking about. The only thought I have about Emil is whether or not I want to give him a shot at left tackle during the bye week. That's the only thought I have on Emil. I wouldn't. But when you're a first-year starter, you're going to have some games where it's like, okay, I wasn't at my best today.
Sure.
Right? And so that's but like with some of these others, we'll talk more about it during the week. I want to focus on this game because that'll be one of our topics of conversation for this week. But for this game, it wasn't necessarily the guys getting beat individually that was my problem. That's going to happen against Louisville. And as a quarterback, that doesn't bother you as much. What can really get in the head of a quarterback is when you're getting constantly having run-throughs. That's the concern. When you're running quick game and a guy's coming at you and drilling you as soon as you're getting to the top of your drop, that's what gets in the quarterback's head. Like you can't even pass pro quick game, really? That's a major problem. So
right.
there was a lot of confusion, and here's the thing: it's not a one-off. This wasn't like
Agreed.
Louisville was doing stuff like, oh my gosh, they're like this has been an issue every week, right. And it's going to have to get fixed. So it's not that you just have to clean up some guys getting beat. That's bad enough, but there's definitely some protection scheme issues, whether it's the scheme isn't good or the players aren't being taught how to handle it. Hey, if you got a mic pro or you got a slide pro or whatever you got going on, here's how you handle these different aspects of it. There's things that they're getting beat on that they are just still getting beat on 3, 4, 5 weeks into the season. That's the big concern for me. And Louisville saw it and they exploited it.
Oh yeah.
And Notre Dame had no adjustments for it.
Right.
And that's a big concern. My other thing, Vince, I've spent a lot of time defending the wide receivers the last couple of years because I feel like a lot of times they get blamed for things that aren't them, and people that only watch. One of the comments I love when I put the whole every pass play breakdown last week is people are like, wow, I thought the receivers played better than I thought they did. And I didn't realize that because I can only see the TV. And I'm like, this is why I try to tell you guys sometimes if all you see is the TV copy, maybe you shouldn't be as harsh in your criticism of wide receivers who you rarely see what they're doing except the get off and then what's happening at when the ball's in the air. This is not one of those times. I was so disappointed by the play of some of the receivers and the tight ends as a whole. And when I talk about tight ends, I'm talking about blocking. We talked about was a problem at the tight end position, but just the lack of I don't even say urgency, just fire with the tight ends coming off the ball in pass pro, especially Mitchell Evans. Like, you can talk all you want about, the knee and all that. Maybe that's the issue and he needs to heal up. I hope that would actually, if I found out he just is still struggling with the knee, that would make me feel a lot better, because the other option is not as good. And that's more of an attitude thing. So I'm going to reserve judgment until I can do a little digging on that. But here's what I do know. For whatever the cause, the effort is not there. The urgency is not there. The focus is not there. Route running is poor. It's not just slow, but it's poor. Just getting guys knocking you down on seam routes. Like, you're a 260-pound tight end and you're getting knocked down on seam routes. Like, come on, bro. Like, what are you trying to do here? I thought I was disappointed in the effort of Chris Mitchell at times on Saturday, Vince. Same thing, just getting knocked off your route, just giving up on routes. Not all the receivers. Like, I didn't think Bo played well on Saturday. But going back and watching the All-22, I never got the feeling that Bo was not given effort. I just think, like, here's the issues I had with Bo. Not focus on the one drop. I thought he was rushing his pivot routes a little too much. Like, Jaden Thomas really sells that pivot and works out. I thought Bo was rushing a little bit too much, which made him coverable. Those are things that I can coach up. Hey, you got to do a better job stacking this guy on a go ball. Riley should have thrown it back shoulder on that one particular go route that was outside. The guy was a step on, and that's one of those ones you throw a backside shoulder ball. That's on Riley. I just didn't think Bo had his best game, but I never watched, and maybe you saw it different. I never once thought, oh, man, Bo's not trying hard. Unfortunately, I can't say the same thing about all the receivers. I thought Jaden Greathouse played hard, but at times you can tell when Jaden's not a primary read because he runs like he's not a primary read. Well, you may not be the primary read, but you still got to run hard because you've got to influence the defense so that the primary read can get open. And so those are some of the issues I had, Vince. I was disappointed by the effort of some of the receivers and the tight ends on Saturday. And I don't want to hear, well, it's because of the quarterback. No. Look, y'all know my stance on that. Your actions are never defined by what someone else does. Your actions are defined by you. Mm-hmm. If I punch someone in the face, I can say, well, he started it, but I still chose to respond. Now, sometimes that response is justified. You know what I mean? Which we talked about earlier. Guy spit in your face. A response is justified. Choose the appropriate response. I never once said, Jordan Clark, you can't respond to being spit in the face. No, you respond. There's a right and a wrong way to respond. And you're a sixth-year senior. You should know that by now.
Exactly.
But when you say, well, I'm not going to play hard because I don't think I'm getting the ball. Okay. Hey, Micah Gilbert, if I put you in the game and you're not going to get the ball, are you going to still run hard? Hey, Cam Williams, how about you? Yes? All right, get in. Because that's my sign. Hey, look, man, you're not going to play hard. I got KK Smith chomping at the bit to get in the game. I got Cam Williams chomping at the bit to get in the game. I got Micah Gilbert chomping at the bit to get in the game. I got Jaden Thomas playing his freaking butt off right now for Notre Dame. Playing his butt off. I'm giving him more snaps because at least I know he's going to play. Hey, right now, my two most giving me great effort receivers I have on the team right now are Jaden Thomas and Bo Collins. Okay, I got to figure out a way to get those two guys on the field together. You know what I mean? Jaden Greathouse. Okay, your situation, you're younger. I'll but here's why, I'll work with him. But like, if you're a senior and you're not playing hard, I don't know what I'm supposed to do with that, except find someone else who's going to play hard. Bet you Logan Soldate's not going to take snaps off. You know what I mean? Bet you Cam Williams won't take snaps off. That's my conversation if I'm Mike Brown. Hey, if you can't give me better effort than that, then I'm going to find somebody else who can. Do you think Mike Mickens would put up with that at corner? You think Al Golden is going to let his linebackers just kind of lollygag around the field if they're not the – no way. You're going to lollygag your butt over to the sideline and sit beside me the rest of the game is what you can do. There's got to be some accountability when efforts – look, again, I'm not – with Bo Collins, I'm coaching up some things he did route-wise, and, hey, you got to catch that ball. there's some things I would do, coach. But hey, you know what? Your effort was there. You just weren't crisp on some things. We'll get that coached up, get back at it, and you're gonna have a big game against Stanford, right? Receivers had bad games. Bo had a bad game, but I didn't question his effort. Jaden Thomas, okay, maybe you're not great at this route, but you're really good over here. But man, your effort every snap, you're blocking your butt off. You're making clutch catches. I mean, Jaden's had 2 huge catches now. 3rd down play against Purdue that went for 23. Big 4th down in this game. I know I'm gonna get him to play hard. I can live with that. So that's my thing is there needs to be some accountability in the receiver room. If you're not going to run hard on every snap, I don't care if you think you're getting the ball or not, because you never know where the ball is going to go.
Exactly.
Then I'm going to find somebody else who did. And I don't hear any excuses about the quarterback's this or the play calls this. You better give me – you're trying to play 6, 7 guys. You're not playing 50, 60 snaps a game. You can go hard when you're in there. And if Cooper Flanagan's back for the Stanford game, I'm gonna have some conversation with those other 2 guys. Hey, you want to play more? I need more from you. Look, I don't care if you run 30 routes as hard as you can and you don't get targeted once. That's my expectation of you. You can't control where the ball goes. Let Gino and Coach Denbrock deal with that, getting the quarterback right. But you control your effort, and that's where I'm at. And guys, let's not compare. I love Cam Williams and I love Micah Gilbert and Logan Saldate, but let's not compare them to Ryan Williams. That's a different type of dude. Okay, but the overall point is the same. You got a lot of freshmen making an impact. You got some freshmen on offense that are chomping at the bit to make an impact. If the effort's not going to be there, I need to find somebody else who can do it. Sure. And if you say, well, Cam doesn't know a lot of routes, they're not running a ton of routes right now.
No, they're not.
I can get Cam to run a go ball, a hitch, a comeback, and an out. I mean, you know what I mean? I can get him to do that, right? So that's my thing is if I'm Mike Brown, there's some film that I have from this Saturday that is going to result in some very uncomfortable film sessions with my receivers this week. And if I don't see changes coming out of it, then I'm going to then make some changes. And to the young receivers at Notre Dame, if you're not happy with where you're on the depth chart, go give me the best effort you've had all year these next 2 weeks and give the coaches a reason to put you in the game, because right now everything is on the table when it comes to fixing the pass game, Vince. Everything. Every position is on the table for changes when it comes to fixing the pass game. From quarterback all the way down to your number 3 receiver, to your 3rd down back, to all your offensive linemen, to running back. And I don't mean benching guys. Sometimes it's, hey, look, we're going to need to get this guy more activated in this type of situation, whatever the case may be. When you talk about quarterback, it may not be benching the quarterback. Maybe it is. But I'm more saying like, okay, we got to figure out some things that we've got to do that maybe will be better for him. We've got to do this. We've got to do that. Everything is on the table. Everything is on the table. And after what I saw on Saturday from that, man, there better be some guys that are having some soul searching going on this week during the bye about how bad do they really want this thing, because you're either part of the solution or you're part of the problem.
Right. Let's talk about some of the key moments for the offense, and then we'll switch on over to the defense, Brian. The first key moment's easy in this game. I mean, offensively, it was that first drive of the game. I mean, and we kind of talked about it earlier, but the moment itself, special teams gives up a fumble, defense gives up a touchdown, 3 plays in, short field, obviously. Now the offense has to respond, and they do so with a 75-yard, 6-minute drive for a touchdown. It's a huge, 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 huge momentum swing, in my opinion, in that game. I mean, the crowd was out of it at that point. I mean, before the offense got the ball, they were out of it. Like they were all stunned, and everybody's thinking to themselves, "Here we go again." Another lackluster home, experience here for Notre Dame. And the offense says, "No, hold my beer. We got this." And they go straight down the field and they do their thing. So that's the easiest first key moment in this game. And obviously it continued on the first 3 series, but that first series, man, that was absolutely electric. And I know there's a moment in that first series that you want to touch on as well.
Well, the 4th down was the big one of that series.
Yeah.
I mean, it was later in the game, they went with the run game, but that was one because it was basically saying, I mean, here's the whole play. Jaden Thomas, you got to beat that guy.
Yeah.
I mean,
and it was one-on-one.
One route. There's a whole read. I'm sprinting left. Jaden Thomas got to beat that guy.
That's exactly what it was.
Guess what Jaden Thomas did? He beat that guy.
Beat him bad too.
And it was that's I said, go back and watch it, folks. That's a win play. You just gotta win.
Yep.
And he did that, and he made the play, and then Riley made the throw. That play right there, like that changes things, Vince, because I'm going to the down and distance. It was 4th and 3.
Yeah.
You're at the 31-yard line going in, so you're not worried about like bad field position, but you've got a nice drive going here. You all of a sudden, you got to a 3rd and 1, right? Or 2nd and 1. You lost 2 yards on a slide route that went for -2 because your quarterback didn't have time to get the ball out to a comeback because he was getting pressured. And you come back out and you throw an incomplete pass on the play before on 3rd and 3 because you had the drop by Bo Collins on 3rd and 3. And you get in this 4th and 3 situation, and it's like all the good things you've done so far and all the momentum you're trying to get back could have been gone if they stop them on 4th down. Now all of a sudden Louisville's got the ball, the 31-yard line, up 7-0, and it's gonna get real interesting moving forward. Right. So that drive was huge, Vince. But that play right there to me was the turning point. Like, you are correct. That drive was the turning point of the game. I think this game looks a lot different if they don't put that drive together. That play was the make or break of that drive. Now, that just got them to the 28-yard line. They still had 28 more yards to go, and they did it.
Sure. But it kept the drive alive. Yeah, no,
that's right.
100%.
That's right.
That was massive. So, and I was look, I'll be honest with you. I was when he dropped back to pass on 4th and 3, I was a little nervous. I mean,
especially sprinting out to his left.
Yes. He had done a great job. He had done a great job up to that point, hitting his layups and doing what he needed to do on that drive. I was very happy with it. Doesn't mean I wasn't nervous when he dropped back and started sprinting out. And
he didn't drop back.
Literally,
he sprinted out.
It was a sprint out, but it was a one
sprint.
If Jaden doesn't win that, it's not a first down. You know what I mean? And if Riley doesn't put it right on the numbers, it's not a first down. So a lot had to go right there, and it did. And so that's why it was a turning point in that game, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
Another turning.
The other one. Go ahead, Vince.
I was gonna set us up for the next one. Another turning point in the game, and it's not really just a single point, but it was short field touchdowns for Notre Dame.
And the sudden change drives, drives 2 and 3. The sudden change drives where you got turnovers on back-to-back drives. One of them you needed to go 53 yards. The other one you needed to go 4. Right. I thought getting touchdown. If they would have got a couple first downs, kicked a field goal, that's still good. You're up 10-7, But, look, I'll put it like this. If you don't get that, if it's 17-14 at the end of the first half and Jeff Brom's facing a 4th and 2, he probably kicks the field goal and ties the game up.
Yeah.
If you would have got a field goal on one of those drives. But I thought those were very important moments, Vince. And
they were massive.
There wasn't a particular play of each one. The one was a one play, 4-yard
one
drive.
Play, yeah.
But the other one, you hit the big pass to Jaden Greathouse. That was big. Good read by Riley. Snapped the ball off. Did a nice job of throwing it behind him. If he leads him, you're leading him into the back of the end zone. Gets a little hairy. Threw it to where Jaden could kind of slow up and make an easy catch. I thought I
said this in the earlier show, and you played quarterback, so you can speak to it a little bit more definitively than I can. Throwing to a guy that's that wide open, sometimes you can start to aim the ball a little bit. You know what I mean? And so,
especially on that part of the field, it would be different if you're throwing a seam route from your own 34, because then you're kind of getting that sucker out there and letting him run underneath it, and then the safety can't come over because you threw it over top of the safety. But the safety's coming over; he's got the back of the end zone as an aid. So he doesn't have to worry about getting depth. He's coming in a straight line across.
Right.
You put that on him, let him slow up on it and make that throw. So when you're throwing to the end zone, you throw at a guy.
Yeah.
That's the coaching point. If you're throwing the ball in the end zone, you throw it at him. You don't lead him on a vertical end zone shot. You throw it at him, right? Again, I'm talking stuff that's in the middle of the field. I'm not talking like a goal ball. We're talking about like if you're throwing something that's sort of any kind of movement route, you're throwing it at him. But even still, same thing if you're at the 15-yard line and you're running basically a go ball, unless you're just catching and throwing, you're throwing it at him because you're going to have to put it back shoulder, let him go up and get it. Like almost every throw in the end zone, you're throwing it at a guy and instead of leading a guy.
Right.
Because you can't let that ball float and you can't lead him too much. So I had no problem with that throw at all. The only coaching point I made is I thought he had one, I thought, gather step too many where I could have seen him go, okay, you go here, you reset your feet and let it rip. I thought that could have been it. But overall, it was good. Yeah. The other turning point for me, Vince, did you have anything before that final touchdown drive?
Nope.
I will say this. The negative turning point was the fumble by Jadarian Price.
Oh, yeah.
That just took all this wind out of the team's sails. I mean, you were rolling in that game. You got the ball
rolling offensively. Yeah.
You put even if you have to punt or only get a field goal, that's a different looking game. That was a major turning point. Now, look, part of that was a good play by the defender. He came up behind him and just ripped it out, just put his hands on the football. But, running backs are taught when you're in traffic, you've got to keep that ball in your chest. I mean, it's just a mistake that he made. Jeremiah Love made one last week. If you ask what the difference was, is Jeremiah's got recovered by your own team. I still thought that Jadarian should have come back in at some point, but apparently coach was making a point to him, and hopefully Jadarian learns from it. I hope they do with Jadarian what Notre Dame did with Audric 2 years ago. You remember when Audric was having fumbling problems early, and he had he had a fumble against North Carolina. He had the really bad fumble against Stanford late in the game. You remember that? And they came out and they benched him against Stanford, didn't come back out. The very next game, they put him at fullback and handed the ball off twice to start the game. I hope that they do. Hey, man, you serve. You know that you know what you did. You've been great for us this year. We're going to go back out there and show you we still got faith in you. So I believe the initial punishment I get, but then it doesn't linger into the next game as long as he's got the right attitude. So, I'd like to see them kind of get him going. But that was big because that's what kind of allowed – they were on the verge of running Louisville off the field at that point in time. And that turnover got them back in. And it was a different game up until that final scoring drive.
Quick aside from the earlier show, Brian, I have to bring this up. I had the exact same – we talked about, the benching and all of that. And I said, you got to get him back in the game, et cetera, et cetera. Well, apparently I've forgotten about this until I was reminded of it today. Apparently, Jesse Stiers fumbled and when he played for me, and I didn't play him the rest of the game. And Sean held that against me. And so he said that I bench people for the rest of the game when you fumble. So I'm not allowed to have a different opinion now.
Okay, well, that's BS. You learned from your ways. You were a young coach at the time.
That's right.
And also, here's the other response. Jesse, you're not good enough at running back
he was a fullback.
To justify going back in. All right, Jadarian is.
Yeah, that's right.
You were no Jadarian Price.
That's right.
Okay,
you were my middle linebacker who fullback at times.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
So anyway,
that would be my response to Sean. Is like,
bring that up.
Now, linebacker, I'm not benching. I remember Jesse as a linebacker. I'm not benching him as a linebacker. If he missed a tackle, I'm going to correct it and get him back in there because Jesse was a pretty good linebacker in high school.
Yeah,
which is why we tried to recruit him.
Right.
But
well, you knew who my tailback was, though, right?
Yeah, Shaq Van. Yeah.
He didn't get benched. Like he got to play. Yeah.
Right. So you weren't good. You're not good enough. It's like the great story from Lou Holtz. I was reading his book one time, and he was talking about why he doesn't get mad playing golf anymore. He says he's playing golf with Arnold Palmer. How about that? Right. Playing golf with Arnold Palmer. And Lou hit a bad shot and he threw his club. And he said that Arnold Palmer said to him, Lou, you are not a good enough golfer to get mad when you don't hit a right shot. And it's like, you are not a good enough running back to get mad at me for not playing you after you fumble.
Oh, great.
So that would be my response to that.
Yeah. So anyway, I had to bring that up just because we were talking about it. So
yeah. Jesse didn't say it. His dad did. But this is the response you give to the dad. 100%, because his dad's clearly holding grudges.
It's great. That's an old grudge.
By the way, Sean's having fun with it. I'm having fun with it. We're not throwing shade at Jesse. I literally tried to recruit Jesse to the school I was coaching at. If that tells you anything about what I feel about Jesse as a football player. So we're just having some fun with it.
That's great. No, that's good stuff.
Final turning point, Vince. Your offense had sputtered. Second quarter sputtered. Third quarter sputtered. Previous drive, you turned it over on downs, got stuffed on fourth down.
Yeah.
And Louisville goes down after you get stuffed on fourth down. And I believe Louisville went down and got a field goal on that next drive, correct? So after Notre Dame Notre Dame's up 24-14, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Going into the fourth quarter, and you get stopped on downs, and Louisville takes that next drive and they kick a field goal. It's now a 1-score game, and there's 11 and a half minutes left in the game. And it is a ball game again at that point in time. And what does Notre Dame do? They come out the next drive, and they get a full start on the first play of the drive.
I know. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. That's what happened there.
Yep. You get down, and it's now 3rd and 6. You're playing behind the sticks the whole time, and you have been pretty terrible on 3rd down the whole game. And Riley hits Jaden Harrison on that big play. And that was one of those ones where, okay, where has that been all game? They used a zip motion and ran a pivot route, and it was the same thing happening against Purdue. Jaden runs a slot fade. Both DBs are looking at the pivot route because Notre Dame's hit that pivot route a couple times, and Notre Dame's hit a bunch of quick game. So I love the play call, Vince, because it's 3rd and 6, and your entire game plan this week, last week, and the week before is on 3rd and 6. You're basically running a bunch of routes at 6 yards.
Yeah, it was a tendency breaker.
And they ran that pivot route. And the thing about a pivot route, and I explained this against the Purdue game, the pivot route is huge in that situation because it crosses the face of both guys that are playing you and the other route. Where if you're just running a normal slot fade, it's just a hitch outside and then the wide fade, you've basically got 2 one-on-ones, so to speak. And there's no real stressor against the defense outside of the coverage, and then you've just got to win the one-on-one. But by doing that zip motion, it's basically a post-snap switch that requires communication by the secondary. And when there's communication post-snap, there's a greater chance for mistakes. It happened against Purdue, and it happened in this game. And Jaden got open. Riley threw it out to him. You get a big gain. I would have liked to see him lead him just a little bit more, but I think he was worried about that safety coming over. And it's like you said earlier, I need to complete this freaking pass. And I'm not trying to lead him for a touchdown. I'm trying to get a freaking first down. And that safety was coming over. And you don't want that ball up in the air too much. So 3rd and 6, you convert that. And then I think it was 2 plays later, you get the touchdown. I thought that drive as a whole, that game, like, I thought at that time you score a touchdown, Louisville starts with 9-16. I said, there's a chance Louisville scores 1 more time against this defense. There's no chance they're scoring 2 more times against this defense in the last 9 minutes of the game. No chance.
Agreed.
I thought the ball game was over then. And that 3rd and 6 play in a game where your 3rd down offense was garbage the entire game outside of that was a huge turning point. That basically won you the game. So I thought that whole – and then the play call 2 plays later is phenomenal. I mean, like a buddy of mine, like 2 plays before was talking about how, you need to get somebody else in there running back and all this other kind of stuff. And then they ran that play, and I was kind of busting the chops. He was like, dude, I could have scored on that play. I'm like, no, you couldn't have. But it was he had to make one guy miss late. He had a great block downfield from Anthony Knapp. But overall, it's like Jeremiah ran good 15, 20 yards before anybody could hit him because it was such a great play call, and they bit on it so hard. And Rocco got it in front of a guy, and then Anthony had a great downfield block that let him score, because otherwise it might have only been like a 20-some yard gain. It let him score, but that series of events, to me, that was the ball game, Vince.
Agreed.
Offense.
Agreed. That's going to do it for our offensive look back at the film, as well as our key moments in the game for the offense. We've got one more segment, so don't go anywhere. But in the meantime, make sure you hit that like button, that subscribe button, that notification bell. Share with your family and friends, and, of course, jump on the boards.irishbreakdown.com. There's going to be all kinds of good stuff up there. It's the bye week, so Bryan just has nothing but time to put up great stuff up on the boards. So make sure you get on the boards.
A pretty high bar there, Vince. You're going to be helping me out with all this great content this week, buddy?
It's homecoming. I don't have time for you. No, just kidding. So make sure you get on the boards.irishbreakdown.com, everybody.
I heard a little.
Let's jump into our final segment of the night, Bryan, our defensive takeaways from the film. There are a few things that we want to cover, and then, of course, we will hit our key moments, only a couple of moments that we want to hit, some turning point moments for the defense. But our takeaways for the defense, let's talk. What do we got here? Wait, I thought
you just got me in trouble.
Well, it's been kind of consecutive of you getting me in trouble with your wife here for the past
You
few days,
said that I would
like.
have more time to do breakdowns now that it's a bye week. You said it, not me.
Oh, no. You're definitely in trouble. Yeah, I'll definitely get in trouble for that. I'm just saying. No, anyway. So defensively, Brian, the secondary. Let's start on a positive note with the secondary. The secondary, especially when you throw in, I mean, you don't even have to throw in the injuries and the different situations that they had to deal with. But even if you didn't do that, the secondary played well. And you add that into it, and it's like, yeah.
Just for who was out there. Like you said,
exactly.
Take any context away. If you didn't have secondary was awesome in this game.
Yes.
A couple plays here and there. Again, Louisville's going to win some battles, and, Leonard Moore gave up 2 deep balls, but they both required great throws and great catches to beat them. I mean, he was excellent. Benjamin had one big mistake in the game. As I said, the one pet play he gave up, if you go back and watch it, even from the TV copy, you'll see the guy kind of, I couldn't tell if he grabbed him up by the jersey or if he grabbed his face mask. I couldn't tell that. Slams him down, and, that's a penalty. That should be a penalty. Can't do that. And, man, but you look at it, I mean, Jordan Clark played great. Leonard Moore played his butt off. Benjamin had another good game. Again, he wasn't perfect, but against a team like Louisville, they're going to make some plays too.
Yeah.
Xavier Watts, like I said, had the one missed tackle. Outside of that, he was great. I thought Adon Schuler had one. I think Adon is who should have, like Adon on the touchdown pass, the second touchdown pass, he kept chasing a guy going across where it's a zone. You got to turn him loose to the front side coverage and sit in that back window. And that's where the guy, I kind of thought that was on Adon. Gotcha. Young guy mistake, stuff like that. I mean, it's a scramble play. That's going to happen on a scramble play. You don't like it, you correct it, but man, I just thought overall, it's like you're nitpicking to find things wrong with the secondary. I mean, you really are. I thought Rod Hurd, who overall I hadn't been thrilled with his play so far. I thought this was his best game in a Notre Dame uniform by far. I think Jordan Clark's been good all year. We said before the game, he's been good, but he hasn't really been challenged yet. He's going to get challenged in this game. And I thought he stepped up and answered the bell impressively. Jordan Clark did. So I thought both your transfers stepped up and played great in this game. And then there was at one point in time where Benjamin Morrison gets hurt, and you got to put Jordan Clark out at cornerback. And, you were still good. So, man, I tell you what, Vince, I was just, I mean, Mike Mickens is just that dude as a coach. I mean, it is insane. And there's 2 aspects of it. One, great talent evaluation, because other than like what, me, like who had Leonard Moore as a dude coming into this class, right? Like I'm talking about like national services. Like I know Ryan liked him a lot. I liked him a lot. I think Sean Davis also was high on him, but like outside of Irish Breakdown, I should say, no one had him in their top 300. I don't think. I'm going to go look at Leonard Moore's ranking. I know a couple of them had him as a 3-star, and I kept trying to tell y'all, like, don't read that stuff. Don't listen to that stuff. That's nonsense. This guy's a baller. Rivals is the only one that had him as a 4-star, and they had him number 228. That's it. Everybody else had him as a 3-star. On 3, had him as the number 71 player in the state of Texas. 247 had him as the number 76 player in the state of Texas. ESPN him as the number 99 player in the state of Texas. They all had him outside the top 40 at cornerback. Tell me that there's 40 better cornerbacks in that class than Leonard Moore. The answer is there isn't. Or it's the greatest cornerback class in the history of football ever. Right? He's a dude. Well, Mike Mickens found him early and got on him early, just like he did Benjamin Morrison. And, the fact that you can lose Cam Hart and replace him with a Christian Gray is impressive enough. And then you can lose Christian Gray, who got reps all week in practice, Vince, because they thought they were going to try to get him to play. He's a game time, no decision. And then the other dude steps in, not getting full starter reps during the week, and balls out. Like literally whatever you're paying Mike Mickens, and I know for a fact that they gave him a nice pay raise this offseason, it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough because that dude is unreal. And let's be honest, what was the question we had? How would he handle coaching the entire secondary? Would the cornerbacks fall off now that he's coaching the entire secondary? I think through 5 games, Vince, we have an answer. Mm-hmm. Would you say that's fair?
I would.
I think we have an answer.
Yeah,
he's just as good coaching the whole secondary as he was coaching corners.
Yeah.
He's legit.
And that's look, and you have to give credit where it's due, right? I mean, he basically doubled the amount of guys that he has to coach. Right. And they're still really freaking good. So, yeah, he is that guy.
And like, I'm not saying like, I'm giving a lot of praise to Mike Mickens because I'm a coach. I just look at it that way. But it's not just he's a great position coach. Part of this is he's a great evaluator.
Sure.
Because none of the other big-time schools were beating down the door to go get Leonard Moore. Just Notre Dame.
Right.
You know, like Bama and like with Benjamin Morrison, like that is a different deal. Like Saban wanted him. Jimmy Lake wanted him. Like those are dudes. This is a different one. This is a Mike Mickens special, right? Christian Gray, you had to beat LSU and Ohio State to get Christian Gray. Everybody thought Christian Gray was a dude his senior year. So my point is this: he's a great evaluator, and his ability, the kind of coach he is, he gives these very talented players the resources and tools they need to be their best. And that's what a great coach does. Give me great players, and then it's my job to make sure that they play to their potential. And it's hard for me to say that doesn't happen all over the secondary right now. You think about it, Vince. You had at one point in time in that game a 6-year senior who doesn't play corner, a true freshman at corner,
right,
a true sophomore at corner, and then Xavier Watts. And you're out there trying to, in the second half of a game, I believe, and you're trying to stop Louisville's offense. And guess what? They did. It's impressive, man. Like, talent is great. Coaching is great. Like, it's just impressive. And then my next, Vince, did you have another takeaway? Because I was going to go into, speaking of young people, I was going to go into something else. What was your kind of takeaway?
You're good. No, you're good.
Secondary?
We wrote down kind of what we were going to talk about. So no, you're good. Hit it.
My next one is, dude, I was so impressed with the young linebackers. Just keep getting better and better and better and better. And again, there was mistakes in this game.
And you knew
Drake had
a
couple mistakes. Kingston had a couple mistakes. Jaden Osbury had a couple mistakes. But the whole point we said was, guys, that's going to happen. We said this all offseason. It's going to happen. But you live with it because they're going to make a ton of plays. And guess what? They all made a ton of plays. Kingston had the really bad run fit that resulted in the big – I think it was on Kingston. This is my opinion. Results in a 40-yard gain. Well, who recovers the fumble on the other end? Sophomore hustling down the field, Jaden Osbury, right? Kingston gets beat on the seam route. But then what does Kingston do? He comes out and executes the best dip and rip edge rush of the season by a Notre Dame player and gets a big sack in the game. I mean, it's just like it's like he makes those mistakes and his head doesn't go down. He doesn't get in his feelings and I made a mistake. No, he's like, you know what? I made a mistake. Move on. Next play. It's maturity beyond what you expect. Drake Bowen, gets beat, early. Doesn't phase him. Next play, I'm coming and I'm crashing you. I'm going to pound you. Jaden Osbury, same thing. Couple times he didn't have great fit, but he just comes out and makes plays. And that kid's ability to tackle in space was huge in this game, Vince. There's a couple times it's him and a receiver or a back in space in the pass game. And if he doesn't make the tackle, this might be something.
Yeah, big play.
And he makes it every time. Like, that trio of young linebackers is, and I'll say this, a lot of what we're talking about here, the hit rate for Marcus Freeman, Chad Bowden, and this defensive staff in 23 and 24 is insanely high. Insanely high. When you think about how many of those kids are already, like, not only playing, but your top guys in a lot of instances. Like, Bryce Young, when he first got put in the game against Purdue, looked like he didn't know what he was doing. He had a couple and then he got a little better. And there's some plays on Saturday against Louisville where you're like, oh, man. In about 5 games, this guy is going to be a major problem as a freshman. It's like Boubacar's balling, and hopefully he's not out for the year. I mean, you just look at these younger players and start saying, like, this staff's ability to identify talent on defense is nuts, because it's like, who's not a hit so far? You know what I mean? Every freshman or sophomore linebacker that stepped on the field, you're like, yeah, they nailed that one. Boubacar nailed that one. Bryce Young nailed that one. Leonard Moore nailed that one. You know what I mean? It's like, these guys, Adon Schuler nailed that one. He wasn't ranked very high. I mean, what was the Don Schuler's ranking coming out of high school, Vince? Let me go look that up here real quick. A Don Schuler, I know we had him as a top 150 guy. Highest ranking for him was 240 nationally. Rivals had him as a 3-star. 247 Sports didn't even have him in their top 247. I would say he's outplayed his ranking so far. That hit success, and but I thought the linebackers, especially Vince, this is a special group. And when these kids are like next year with Kingston, Drake, Jaden Osbury kind of dominating the inside in some trio, oh my gosh. When they get another year under their belt, oh, Lord have mercy. Oh, somebody just said Kennedy Urlacher, hit. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, they're and not all these guys are highly ranked, Vince. Matter of fact, most of them aren't. Kingston was highly ranked like that. Drake was highly ranked by everybody except on 3. But a lot of these, Bryce was highly ranked, but Logan Thomas, you know what I mean? Like, he wasn't a super highly ranked guy. Kennedy wasn't highly ranked. Leonard Moore wasn't highly ranked. Adon wasn't super highly ranked. The identification of this staff is huge, and they were so impactful on Saturday. Like, think about that. All the stuff we talked about with this defensive coaching staff or this defensive performance, that was done. There was a time in the fourth quarter, Vince, I can't remember if it was 6 or 7, but I counted 6 or 7 freshmen or true sophomores on the field at the same time. And you're just like, man.
Oh, yeah.
And they're out there making stops.
And they were out there in big moments. It wasn't like they were out there when it was 42-0.
No.
You know what I mean? Like, they were out there when it mattered and making plays. So that was massive. That was absolutely massive. So
those are my really big 2 takeaways. I mean, we talked a lot about it. We talked about,
we talked about the veterans. And we talked about a lot of that kind of stuff. I agree.
The different things. I think we kind of everything we thought we saw live. A lot of it was confirmed.
Defensively,
there was nothing I saw on film that I was like, that was more disappointing than I thought. If anything, things were a little better than I thought. Right. Outside of some of the mistakes, but we already broke all that down. So I think we kind of nailed that.
We kind of talked about that in the post game show,
right?
You know what I mean? Right. So yeah. Anyway,
and we're trying to not have this just be a rehash of the post game show.
Correct.
That's why we're trying to do a little bit different.
Key moments on the defense. I think we've got a couple here that we want to talk about. First one I think was massive, and it was at the end of the first half, and them preventing Louisville from scoring.
I'm actually before that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, my first big moment was the strip of.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I just wrote that as number 2. So yeah. So yes, chronologically, absolutely.
You
correct.
were on your heels defensively. We've talked about how great the defense was, right? Didn't start that way.
No, it didn't.
Didn't start that way. You had 2 blown coverages on your first 4 plays, and then you had a blown assignment on a read zone, and the quarterback is literally. I mean, he is just. I thought at first he was going to be gone. Yeah, and I thought Xavier was eventually going to catch him, and then out of nowhere, Leonard Moore just comes flying downhill and strips it, and then Jaden Osbury hustling like a champ from the backside falls on the ball. That was a huge moment because you were on your – they were about to be right now in your – one play go from – where was the ball? Because they started kind of deep, Vince, if I remember correctly. Notre Dame did a really nice job on their coverage.
They started
on that play.
They started. You're talking about they was on the Louisville 7. They were on the 7-yard line.
Yes, because that's right. Drake Bowen forced a fumble. Yes. That's right. On the kick return, Drake forced a fumble.
So remember, you and I were talking about that. So they forced the fumble, and you and I were like, "Are they ever going to recover a fumble?" Remember that?
It's like the 9th time this year that a ball has gone on the ground on the defense or special teams that Notre Dame has not recovered. And I'm like,
we were so frustrated.
Unreal.
And then the very next
play.
The very next play, they cause a fumble and recover it. I was like, well, they recovered that one, Brian. So, yeah, I remember talking about that. So, yeah, they were backed up all the way to the 7.
Yeah, they were on their heels, Vince. Like, they were having a hard time with Louisville, with all the stuff Louisville's doing. Because they're not a heavy read zone team, but like they know that Notre Dame likes to crash backside. Notre Dame was on its heels defensively, like big time.
Oh, absolutely.
That play right there. And then the offense's response, to me, if you could point to what was the biggest turning point of the game, it wasn't necessarily Notre Dame's initial response. That was big. But the turning point, because if you give another touchdown drive right back, that drive by Notre Dame is negated. It's out the gate. You're still down -7 because of the fumbled kick, right? But you make that play right there. Leonard Moore, Jaden Osbury making that play. And great job by Xavier Watts hustling, because the part of the reason Leonard forced it is because the quarterback is focused on Xavier, because Xavier was trying to catch him, and he's looking at Xavier trying to keep him off of him, and then Leonard comes from behind and knocks it out. 3 great plays on that, which overcomes a big mistake. That to me, and then of course the offense responded with a touchdown. That was the biggest turning point of the game for me, was that sequence right there.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. It completely changed the momentum of that game. Just completely changed it. And look, Notre Dame had kind of gotten some of the momentum back by going on that long drive, obviously. But then to get that fumble and to go from, oh my gosh, I can't believe they just gave up a 50-yard run. You know what I mean? As I'm watching him just run in open green grass to, oh my gosh, the ball's on the ground. Oh my gosh, Notre Dame got it. And then they go down and score. It's massive. It was absolutely massive for that point in the game.
And it was huge for the crowd, too. Like, the crowd was going crazy when they forced that fumble and recovered it.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, it was big time. It was big time.
Right.
And then, Vince, let's go to the one you're talking about.
Yeah, so the next one was the series right before half. That was a situation where, come on, let's be honest. Louisville should have scored on that series. They got the ball on the 25-yard line. They took it 60 yards in 10 plays, and Notre Dame ends up turning them over on downs and prevents them from scoring. At the very least, they should have kicked a field goal, gotten some points out of it. It would have been a one-possession game. They didn't do it. They tried to go for it. They had that replay and all that, to see if the spot was good. He didn't make it. He did not make the first down. I think it was fairly clear. They called it that way on the field. They couldn't reverse it. That's a huge play going into halftime, because also Louisville was getting the ball to start the second half. I think people sometimes forget about that as well. If they score there, even if it's just a field goal, they're down 7, they get the ball back at the beginning of the second half. If they go down and score, now all of a sudden it's a tie game, completely different ball game. So you kept a 2-score lead going into halftime by stopping them after a pretty decent drive, by the way. 10 plays, 60 yards, pretty decent drive. You hold them out of the end zone, hold them without a field goal, turn them over on downs. That's pretty massive.
Well, if you add further context into the conversation, Vince, which is the drive before you had intercepted them, your offense gets you a field goal, so you're now up 10. You give up that last drive at the end of the game, and all of a sudden their momentum is back to them. To your point, now it's a 24-17 or 24-21 game. They start off with the half, and you're scrambling a little bit. Instead, it's a 10-point game going into halftime. So I thought that was huge. And, honestly, Vince, if I'm looking at that play, I believe it was Heinisch and I'm going to try to find that. I believe it was Heinisch and Xavier Watts that made the play, right? But the thing I loved about the play, though, is let me go find that particular play, that 4th down play, is Kingston ends up not making the play. But if I remember correctly, he forced the bounce. So they ran a speed option on the play, right? Kingston reads it, and he starts running to the running back. So the running back you're catching that pitch, and you're running. This is your teaching point, Vince. You're an option guy. You know what the teaching point is. You catch the pitch, you are on a beeline for the sticks. That's the play. Kingston, playing it the way he did, forces the guy to bounce it a little bit, and then he dives at his feet, gets a piece of the foot, which causes the guy to chop. That was enough to allow Donovan and Xavier to catch up and drill him before he got to the sticks. Yep. And then great job by those guys, too, of coming with force and not letting them drag. But if Kingston doesn't make that initial read, and even though he doesn't, quote-unquote, make the play, he read it perfectly, pitched it outside of him, and then his hustle forces that guy think about it, just that little stutter step of getting away from Kingston's attempt to tackle is what kept him from being this short of the first down. If he doesn't have to stop, if Kingston just crashes on the quarterback and doesn't play that correctly, that's a first down. And you probably get 3 or 4 yards on that play, Vince. So just a great play, and it was a play that last year Louisville ran at Notre Dame, and Notre Dame didn't play it well. And that was huge. And it again, great job by Kingston, great hustle by Donovan Heinisch. Think about who we just talked about, Vince. Xavier, your All-American, makes the first hit, but who's coming screaming down the line? your nose tackle. Like, I'm looking at this. He was engaging with the center on that play, Vince. He was engaged with the center, and he helps make that tackle at the sideline. You know what I mean? So, like, that's want to, Vince. That's want to. That's all that is. I want to make a freaking play here. This is a big moment. And it was 3 kids that played smart, but just wanted it. That's what it was, Vince. I want this. I'm going to make this play. And they made it.
Yeah.
And
100%.
That's where they're at.
And that's what I love to see about this defense. And they continue to grow and get more technically sound. But in only one game did I ever feel this season where they didn't have it turned up a little bit when it comes to a want to as a team. And I'm not calling anybody out individually, but it didn't feel like they had that want to against Northern Illinois. They've had it every other game. And hopefully that continues. And then you add into the, hey, young guys getting even more fundamentally sound as they go through it and not make as many mistakes and things like that. But then you're not kidding. This defense wanted it on Saturday, and it was fun to watch. When a defense is like that and they're flying around and they're flying to the football, then you can see the speed, the athleticism, and all of that it's clearly been recruited here. It's fun to watch, Brian. It's fun to watch. So that's going to do it for this edition of Upon Further. Oh, no, we've got some super chats. We have some super chats, I do believe, Brian. So why don't you go ahead and pull those up, and I will read them.
I want to say one last thing here, Vince, before we move to that.
Hit it.
There was still a time in the fourth quarter where they had the ball in Notre Dame territory on 4th down with a chance to tie the ball game, and they came up with another stop. So like that, there was to end the first half and end the game. Yeah. You had big 4th down moments and you made plays.
Yep.
And and did so without interfering, because for all the crying on ESPN apparently about that should have been PI. No, it could have been PI on the offensive guy who was grabbing Jordan Clark's jersey,
grabbing his
Jordan
jersey
Clark is making a play on the ball.
Right. Correct.
You know, so
come on.
Yeah, that was another big moment. And it made up for the fact that I hated that they went away from what they were doing on the previous drive and kind of not let them go down and score, but made it easier. I hate that. You've been doing this all game. You've been stopping them all game. Keep doing what you're doing. And, it is what it is. But that last drive was also pretty big. And there was a couple big plays leading up to that kept them in that 4th down situation and put the defense in a position to be able to put it away on that last one, Vince. So I was the clutchness of this defense in those moments was very important.
Yep.
Very, very important.
Agree with that completely.
Yep. Because they had the 2nd and 5, 3rd and 2, and 4th and 1, and you stopped them.
Yep.
And so that was big. It's big.
All right, let's hit some of these super chats, Brian, and we can wrap up the show for this evening. Anthony Solomon, thanks for the super chat. Appreciate you. Gentlemen, would you agree that the recruiting of Freeman and Bowden were spot on? Thanks. I think we answered that pretty well.
Certainly defensively. I think there's still some question marks about offense to a degree. I mean, there's been some hits, Vince, right? Jeremiah Love's been a hit. Anthony Knapp is struggling right now, but you can see the talent. You can see the potential for down the road. The only reason he's playing right now is because he was thrust into a role that none of us expected he would be thrust into as a freshman. So he obviously has got some. I mean, Sam Pendleton is going to be a really good player at Notre Dame. He's young. I mean, some young guys are being thrust into those spots. Cooper Flanagan's been very, very good. So Aeneas Williams and Kedron Young in limited snaps have both looked good. We haven't seen CJ Carr in a game or Kenny Minchie in a game, but goodness gracious, Vince, you and I have seen him in some practices and blue gold games, and they look pretty flipping good. So they just haven't had a chance to show it as much on Saturdays. Jaden Greathouse, Jordan Faison, they have. So we're not seeing it as much on offense, but we're still seeing it on offense as well. But yes, the hit rate so far, Charles Jagasaw would have been one of those, right? That Harry Heastan identified and would have, so it's been super high on both sides of the ball, but especially on defense, Vince. Especially on defense. It's been crazy.
Lou Holtz, Thunder and Bolts. Thank you for the super chat. Appreciate you. Call me crazy. Bowen is quickly emerging as a leader on this defense, perhaps the team bringing the juice these past 2 games. The team needs leaders to step up in the next 7 games.
And I'm good if it's freshmen and sophomores. I don't care.
Doesn't matter to me.
It really doesn't. I don't know that I would say Drake is emerging as a leader as much as I would say Drake is emerging as a playmaker on the defense. And look, this is what we talk about, guys. The more you play, the more confident you get in what's the only difference between Drake now and Drake in game 1 and 2 is he's more comfortable of what he's supposed to do.
Yep.
I know what to do now, so I can go harder more consistently. That's what it's about. Same thing with Kingston. Same thing with Jaden Alsbury. But yeah, I mean, Drake plays with a different type of, and really they all do. That's what I love about it. But Drake is your Mike. And he just plays with a lot of physicality and fire. And you're starting to see him play more emotionally. And what I mean emotionally, meaning like in reaction to stops and big plays. You're seeing him play with more fire because he's just more comfortable in what he's doing, Vince. And so he can just be more natural and more free. And boy, he's a play. I mean, just again, it's like every time somebody wants to talk about Kingston, I want to bring up Drake and Jaden. Every time somebody talks about Jaden, I want to bring up Kingston and Drake. Every time somebody talks about Drake, I want to bring up Kingston and Jaden because it's just like the three of them are so freaking good together. Right. They just are, man. It's exciting. And I think Max Bull is doing a great job with them because when young players get better and better each week, you got to give a shout out to the coaching. And they're still making mistakes, but we're not seeing a lot of the same mistakes repeated over and over and over again like we are with the offensive line. You know what I mean? So, shout out to the coaching for Max Bull as well. So, yeah, it was big time. Got another one from we have a few of them from Lou Holtz Thunder and Bolts.
Man. Great name, and thank you for all the super chats, my man. Appreciate you very much. Local DEN News reported the Broncos parted ways with Lando, citing concerns over the team injuries, concerns for Notre Dame considering the injuries this year.
There's this long debate in the chat about whether you can or can't blame Landau for the injuries that Notre Dame is having so far, and there's a lot of them. I'll say this. The injuries that they're having are not necessarily strength conditioning issues, but they're not independent of it either. We don't know. And what I mean by that is there could be things going on. Normally, ACL injuries aren't strength conditioning problems. But when you had as many of them as Notre Dame has had, you at least have to be willing to have the conversation because it's the ones we know about. You can't blame strength conditioning for Ashton Craigs. Boubacar and Jordan Botelho both had knee injuries. Now, we don't know if the extent of Boubacar's compared to George, but they were both basically kind of non-contact. They were kind of landing. That could just be freaky. It could be the field. It could be the cleats. It could be whatever you're doing strength-wise. You're not doing enough to build up the muscles at the end of the ligaments, right? I mean, there's a lot of things it could be. I don't know if the injury issues are because of the strength program. I don't know. And I'm hesitant to say that it is because for two reasons. One, it is still early, and B, that's not my area of expertise. I know like a good strength program, but as far as like, to that degree, no, I don't. And so I'm real hesitant to speak authoritatively on things that I don't view myself as sort of like an expert on. You know what I mean? So it's not a lot of shoulder injuries, which concerns me when you're talking about a strength program. It's not a lot of neck injuries, it's not a lot of hamstring injuries and quad injuries. It's like knees, and those are concerning to me. But like Bronte Johnson's, he's got his foot in a boot. You know what I mean? It's like Billy Schrouth got rolled up on. So it's too early to definitely say, hey, Landau's a problem. And, that's too and with easy. The Broncos, you could make an argument that they brought a lot of the guys that were getting hurt were guys that came in with injury histories anyway.
True.
And continued to have injury problems. So it's unfair to say this is a Landau problem. It's also unwise to ignore it and say that it's definitely not. This is something Marcus Freeman says challenge everything. At the end of the season, they need to sit down with team doctors, Brian Radigan, Rob Hunt, and Lauren Landau and said, hey, listen, are there things that we're doing that's leading to this high propensity for these things? Because sometimes, Vince, it's just bad luck. But you can't just assume it's that. You've got to do your due diligence when you get to the end of the season. And to a degree, I do it during the bye week. Sometimes knee injuries can happen because you're overworked and you're more fatigued. There's a lot of things that could happen. I can't speak on that. And I think we would be unwise to definitively say Lauren Lando is the problem. Just as much as I think we would be unwise to say Freeman doesn't need to worry about it. It's just bad luck. Move on. I think both of those answers are unwise. And just say, hey, look, it's not good. And hopefully when the time comes, they'll be able to figure out why and then address it. Because it could be a cleat problem. It could be a field problem. There's all types of maybe the way you're teaching certain things isn't good. Hey, lineman, this is why you don't lock your feet in the ground when you're blocking, because if you're not locking your feet in the ground and somebody lands on you and you're moving, it's like, whatever. There's a lot of things, Vince. So I'm concerned about the injuries. I'm just not sure that I'm comfortable blaming anything for it, because I just don't know enough about that type of thing. And to say, like, look, I can explain to you why their run game isn't working sometimes. I can explain to you some of the issues in the pass game. This is not my area of expertise.
Yeah.
I would just say if I was a head football coach, I would be having some conversations with people just to explore it. So, hey, guys, let's figure out why this is happening. Let's find a reason. And the answer just may be bad luck.
Right.
We at least need to be having those conversations. But those are people whose expertises are in. Brian Radigan is the person to talk to about this, not Brian Driscoll. You know what I mean? Rob Hunt's the person to talk to about this, not Brian Driscoll. And not any of us except people that maybe have that expertise. I'm not saying ignore it. I'm just simply saying it's a problem. We just don't know. And it's easy to blame the strength coach. It may be his issue. It may not. I don't know the answer to that. But it certainly needs to be looked into, because it's a lot. It's a lot of injuries and a lot of knee injuries, which is something to be aware of, Vince.
ND Milton fan, thanks for the super chat. What are the main improvements you have seen from the offense in Riley Leonard game 1 through 5? And where could they end up if they continue to progress as they have?
ND Milton fan, I appreciate this question. And I promise you that you will get a very long response to this tomorrow. Because this is going to be the topic of, hey, not cool, Vince. Do that on the inside, not the outside.
That was just for you, buddy.
Yeah. Well, me and all 400 some people watching.
You can expect the long-winded.
Yeah. I didn't say long-winded. I said long answer. You're just 0 for 2 on this response there, buddy. We're going to just know I know where you live, and it's not that far. But that's what tomorrow's show is going to be about. I'll just say this. I think the main improvements have been, just Riley's getting more comfortable with the offense. Mike Denbrock's doing a better job of getting stuff that Riley's more comfortable with. And that's really the main reason for it, to be honest with you, in these first couple games. And then, of course, you have his running ability, and the more that they're running him, the more effective the offense has been. And they're learning that. Now, I don't know that that's sustainable. And there's a lot of room that has to continue to improve. But the continued areas for improvement we'll talk about a lot tomorrow. But there's a lot of personnel that needs to be reevaluated. There are certain alignments that need to be reevaluated, some schematic things that need to be reevaluated. Some things need to come out, some things need to go in. Everything's, like I said, everything's on the table during this bye week. And we'll dive into a lot more of those things tomorrow. I know that's an important question, and that's why tomorrow's topic is going to be driven around it. Trevor and I are going to talk about a lot of these different things tomorrow during our show. But I think that's just sort of a real quick overview of just some of the things specifically to your question. And then Lou Holtz, Thunderbolts, Vince said, I'm an idiot. The Landau post was dated. Long day. You guys rock. Keep up the great work, gents. But it's still a legitimate question.
Appreciate it. That's a legit question. It's not dated, I don't think. Yeah. ND 92 and 57. Thank you for the super chat. You need to talk to Josh Pate about his Louisville take.
I might actually reach out to Josh, but I need to listen to what he said first. Apparently, because I hesitate to, like, there's been times people say, well, did you hear what Lucky Lefty said? And I'm like, all right. So I talked to Sean about it, and he's like, yeah, that's not even close to what I said. And that's why I don't respond to those things, because, you're getting how someone perceived what was said, not necessarily what was said. But essentially, Vince, what people have said is that Josh Pate said that game was more about Louisville beating themselves than it was Notre Dame beating Louisville, which makes me think Josh didn't watch the game and just looked at the stat sheet.
And I will defend him in that if you just look at the stat sheet, yes, I don't disagree with that take.
Right. You see Notre Dame had a 4-yard touchdown drive, and right.
I don't disagree with that take. I really don't. But
I would still say you need to look at the stat sheet and still see that Louisville had a 24-yard touchdown drive and a 9-yard touchdown drive. So if you look at short drives, Louisville had more points off short drives than Notre Dame did.
And those all were turnovers by Notre Dame.
Like, you're looking at yards. Yeah. Louisville had almost 400. Notre Dame had 2 something. Like, I get all that, but that's why you should watch the game first and not just respond.
This game, though, I will say, is one of the most like of games that I have followed closely, the way that game played out and the outcome of that game and everything about that game just doesn't match up with the stats. It was a weird anomaly game. I will say that. So you can't just look at the box score. You got to actually watch
kind
the
of
game.
purposely got real conservative when
because of the
lead, which I don't agree with it, but it's easy to see.
Sure.
And then Louisville got some decent yards late because Notre Dame was kind of getting out of what they do defensively and kind of letting them go on a long drive that was going to take a lot. I mean, that touchdown drive that Louisville had late in the game took 4 minutes off the clock.
Right.
So, okay. I mean,
and they used all their timeouts, which didn't
exactly
very good either. So,
yeah. I'll actually go back and listen to what Josh said, but I don't want to spend too much time on it till I actually listen to what he said because he's usually a pretty reasonable guy. But if he said what people said, that's a bad take by Josh.
Yeah, that's fair. Nerd for life. Thank you for the super chat. Appreciate you. If you've covered this, sorry. We want Riley held accountable. Price, Cross, and Mills. When is Knapp held accountable? Do we not have anyone else?
I mean, too many fans have this whole guys not playing want to be accountable. Well, okay, there's different ways to have accountability. It's just like anytime a coach is doing, I fire him. It's like, well, you don't think Anthony Knapp is being held accountable from the standpoint of he's getting, coached up hard and getting critiqued for his mistakes in games. As I said, he didn't play great on Saturday, but this is the best game he's played so far.
Yeah.
Like you can't bench, like this the reality is, and not every position is treated the same, and not every player is treated the same. And I don't care if anybody tells you that no coach on the planet treats all his players the same. You treat them all fairly, you don't treat them all the same. And the reality is Riley Leonard was not, or Jadarian Price was not benched because Marcus Freeman said, or Mike Denbrock said, Jadarian, get out. You screwed up. You're not playing anymore. Well, that's a Dylan McCullough decision, and that's consistency from Dylan McCullough. He does not like lost fumbles. And you know who else got benched for an entire game because of a lost fumble? Audric Estime last year in the opener. I don't believe Audric came back after he fumbled in the first half, correct? I don't believe he did. I think Jadarian and Jeremiah and those guys played the rest of the game, I think. And so that's the position coach sets that agenda. You talk about Cross and Mills. I mean, again, how do you know there's not accountability from the standpoint of how things are going in the meeting room and on the practice field? And again, those two guys just played the best. This is like the worst time ever to bring up, Riley Mills held accountable. And are you talking about Riley Leonard held accountable? Again, he gets criticized for his mistakes. You can't bench a quarterback every time he throws in. It's just a different position. So I know that might make some of you feel better, but that's not how coaching works. And I'll say this again. When the offensive line is playing the way that it has, you have one quarterback in the roster that can still survive playing behind this line, and it's number 13. So, and again, when was the last time Riley Leonard threw an interception? Wasn't it the second game of the year?
Yeah, that's the only, he had threw two, and that was the only time he turned the ball.
One turnover in the last 3 games, and it wasn't good, but he's had 1 turnover in the last 3 games. So I would say that maybe he was held accountable because he's not making those mistakes again. He had the misses on the short throws last week against Miami of Ohio. He didn't have those misses this week. Well, that tells me that he was held accountable because he got coached up and he didn't make those mistakes again. That's what real coaches do. They don't just yank a guy because he made a mistake unless you have set a standard in your room that if you fumble the football and they lose the football, you will not play.
Yeah.
And that's
pretty clear that has been set in that room. I mean,
there's precedent for that.
Yeah, there's
Audric had that happen in 2022. He fumbled against Stanford, didn't play the rest of the game. Against Stanford. Play another snap. And that's again Dylan McCullough. So I don't necessarily agree with that. Taking a guy out for an entire game, maybe a half. But I felt Jadarian should have come back in. But I'm not the running backs coach. Dylan McCullough is. And Dylan McCullough is a far more accomplished running backs coach than I was.
I was going to say, overall, I think he's doing a pretty darn good job coaching these running backs. So
he knows the reasons why he did that.
Yeah.
So
Right.
Yeah. I just say accountability needs to be had, I think, a little bit more on this football team. I do think there's something to that, but I just think sometimes as fans, we tend to put our accountability hat on to there's only one way to do that. And that's the mistake I think we make as fans, is that we think there's only one way to provide accountability, and that's to bench a guy. And that's not always the answer. No, I don't need to bench Riley Mills to get him to play better, Howard Cross. I need to get them to play better, because if they're on the bench, they're not getting better. I need to figure out a way to push the right buttons to get them to play better. Well, guess what? On Saturday, they did. Right? Riley Leonard's gotten better each week. Okay, that's good. Right? Yes, Jadarian, he had to deal with that. Now let's see what they do. Because you remember what they did? I think we talked about this earlier. You remember what they did when Audric had those fumbles against Stanford? Very next game, I think we talked about this earlier. Venture, did you and I talk about this before the show? They put him right in the game, and I think he got the first 2 touches of the game the next game. I hope they do that with Jadarian.
Yep.
And then lesson learned, but it's still saying, but we still believe in you. Just can't do that again. And
right.
You know what? When Audric got benched against Navy, how many times Audric put the ball on the ground the rest of the year? I believe it was 0 times.
He didn't fumble it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you can disagree with the way that they're going about it, but the results speak for themselves. I just, there you go. Oh, I'm sorry. That's a new one. I apologize. Yep. Athmos ND.
You're like, Bryan, you are not doing your job.
Yeah. I was like, waiting.
Yeah.
Like, no, I already did it. Yes. Is there potentially an attitude issue from the older guys because the young guys are gobbling up more and more playing time?
I can't speak on that because I don't know. And I'm telling you, like, when I see Mitchell Evans playing the way he played, I've seen enough guys that have attitude problems to make me think that's an attitude problem. But it could also be guys giving you everything he's got, but he's maybe 75% from the knee injury, but he has to play. Like, it could be that as well. And sometimes that can look like you're not giving great effort. You're not locked. There's some other things that I've seen from Mitchell that makes me think it's an attitude, not just a knee. But, so, like, I just don't know that I want to go there. I mean, obviously, Jaden Mickey left the team because he wasn't playing as much as he wanted to. So I mean, there could be some of that, but it's hard for me to really speak to that with any kind of conviction because I don't know. I haven't been told that.
Right.
No one's come to me and said, hey, this is an issue. It's just, I understand why you're asking that question. I do.
Right.
And in some instances, I think that's the case. But I mean, overall, I haven't seen Rod Hurd play with a bad attitude because Adon Schuler beat him out. Matter of fact, I've seen Rod Hurd play pretty hard. He hasn't always played well. He's played hard. I haven't seen Jack Kaiser play with any kind of pissy attitude because at times he's not playing as much as I'm sure he'd like to play. I haven't seen Riley Mills throwing, hissy fits on the sideline or giving half butt effort when Jason Onye is getting some of his snaps. Now there's a difference between playing well and then playing with a bad attitude. Like, I thought Howard Cross sometimes attitude wasn't great, but it wasn't like he was losing snaps. Maybe it was the hamstring. I'm saying, like, there's always things that maybe we don't know, and that's why I'm hesitant to say that.
Sure.
The receivers running slow routes because they're pissed about the quarterback play or something else, or are they just not sure of what they're doing? I mean, but I will say this. I do understand why this question would be raised. And I hope the answer is no. But the good news is if that is the case, then okay, cool. We'll give those guys even more reps. Because that's always my answer. Whenever I had a veteran complaining about how many reps a young guy was getting and now it's not fair, this, that, and the other thing, unless he was able to sit down and say, hey, okay, you want to show me on film where you're out playing this guy? And if he could sit down and show me on film where maybe then okay. If you're going to come in here and complain about playing time, all right, cool. Well, you know what my answer is going to be to that. The same thing on this show maybe this is the coach of me when people are like complaining about when's the show going to start. It's like, okay, I'll wait another couple minutes. You know what I mean? Like,
exactly.
Like, you're not going to get the response you think you're going to get from me.
Well,
it's like, all right, cool. You want to complain about that? Then I'm going to play this guy even more next week because you're not doing.
Yeah.
Like, I don't need you to complain about your playing time. I need you to go out into practice next tomorrow and just give me the best you've got.
Yeah,
and that's what I want to see.
Speaking of the coach in you, there was a kid that came in today and he wanted to be seen and he was kind of throwing a little fit and he's like, when am I going to be seen? I'm like, when I'm ready for you. Like, this isn't Burger King. You don't get to have it your way. Like you. And then I leaned over to the secretary. I was like,
did he even know what that meant? Do they still have the slogan?
I don't know. I don't know. He was not happy. And I leaned over to the secretary. I was like, I'm going to go pretend to do some more stuff. I'll come get him when I'm ready. Like, yeah, it's exactly that. It's like, dude, no, that's not how this works.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it. This is a great comment. Accountability equals how good is your backup sometimes. I mean, that's also kind of true.
No, you're
That
not
is
wrong.
sometimes very true.
Look,
That can
we both
sometimes
coach
be very
teams.
true.
We have both coached teams that we have starters who you want to be held more accountable, but it's very difficult because they know and I know and all the other coaches and all the other players know we're not taking them out because we are at a severe disadvantage if we do. And that sucks. That's a really crappy place to be as a coach, because if you don't have a kid who's a good kid who's going to hold himself accountable, you can be between a rock and a hard place at times. Are you going to hurt the team by, benching this kid or whatever? It's tough. It is very, very tough. So I agree with that.
This is a follow-up from Nerd for Life, kind of adding to his comment earlier, giving some clarity to what he was saying earlier.
Yes. He said, thanks for another super chat, by the way. He says, let me clarify. I think Riley Leonard, Cross, Mills, and Price are being held accountable, but Knapp is not. Kid gloves.
Again, I don't agree with that. I don't know that you could say that because he's playing that he's not being held accountable, because Riley Leonard has not lost any snaps because of his poor play.
Right.
And you're saying that you thought he's been held accountable. Okay, well, how do you know that it's not the case with Anthony Knapp? How do you know that he's not getting his booty chewed out in the film room or in the practice field because he's not making? But again, it's like, but if you don't have a better option, there's only so much accountability you can do. Like if they don't think anyone else can play left tackle right now, then maybe that's the case. Maybe that's how they think, and then he's not. And I'd love to hold him accountable, but who am I going to put in there right now? And they're kind of one tight end injury away from being in that position in tight end. You know what I mean? Like, but. Look, before I say there's no accountability, I want to wait to see what happens during the bye week, Vince, because it can be a challenge sometimes to make an offensive line change like that right in the middle of the season after you already have to make other line changes because of injuries. Like, these two guys go down in the same game. I got to worry about getting Rocco and Pat settled. I can't also now worry about getting a new left tackle settled. Now we got a brand new offensive lineup. You know what I mean? Like, let's see what kind of changes are made during the bye week, including maybe them spending some more one-on-one time with Anthony to try to correct some of those mistakes. Because, again, accountability is not always benching people or taking snaps away. Sometimes accountability is, hey, man, we need to get this fixed, and you need to do your job in order to do that, meaning like not do your job, but I mean like I'm going to spend the time with you if you put in the work. Let's do that. And if he's not willing to do that, then you find somebody else, generally speaking. But accountability is not always benching a guy. Sometimes it is, though. And that's why this bye week is going to be very interesting. But as I said, he still wasn't very good. But I would argue this is probably Anthony Knapp's best pass blocking game so far this season. Wasn't great. I don't even know that I'd call it good, but it was better. Okay, can he build on that? Or do they need to make a change? I would say if you're asking me, well, I'll save that for tomorrow because we'll talk about that tomorrow. Last couple, Vince.
All right, Mike Nolan with a super chat. Thank you so much. Seems like you guys are inferring there's a bit of an attitude problem on the team. Evans at tight end. Snead not happy after the game. Mickey leaving. Is this true? And if so, is it fixable? Did it cause NIU?
No, don't infer. Like, guys, I'm a pretty open book.
Yeah.
And
right.
You don't have to read into things that I say because I tell you exactly how I feel. If I thought there was an attitude problem on the team, I would say there's an attitude problem on the team. And I have said that before in the past, not about this team. Just because there's an attitude, you got over 100 guys on this football team. Just because 3 of them clearly have a quote-unquote attitude doesn't mean that the team has an attitude problem. I think right now, I'm concerned that Mitchell Evans has one. I'm not even saying that he does have one. I'm seeing some body language that would make me think that there might be that. Maybe it's the knee. You know what I'm saying? Jaden Mickey's thing, I don't like. I don't like it. And we had a long conversation on that. Jalen Seed not happy for the game. We're just assuming because apparently somebody said Jalen Seed stormed off and didn't do the alma mater with the team. I don't know if that's true or not.
Right.
Right. So even if I granted what they're saying is true, I don't know that it's true. And then you said, well, he only played 12. Okay. But how do you know that there wasn't something else that he was mad about? Maybe somebody said something to him after the game from the other team. There was a little bit of a mini
there
trash
was
talking after the game. You know, maybe the coaches sent him to the locker room because he said something to, you know, they were concerned. Or maybe late in the game, he got dinged up and they sent him to the locker room because you got to go get looked at. That's what I was going to say. There's a whole host of things that could be that reason. And we're all assuming we know the reason that it was because of this. Right. And so what I'm saying is, I don't know if Jalen Snead has an attitude problem in this instance. I know he's had some in the past, but I don't know that this was because of that. Maybe it was. I'm not saying it wasn't. I'm saying most likely anyone saying that it was is just assuming that they know the answers more than anything. And so, again, I'm not saying it isn't. But what I'm saying is we shouldn't, you know, there's a lot of things people say on the internet that turn out to be total BS. And just because it's become the new talk du jour about somebody's bad attitude doesn't mean that it's true. Just like you guys shouldn't go running to every other message board saying Driscoll says Mitchell Evans has a bad attitude. He definitely does. Driscoll's not saying Mitchell has a bad attitude. Driscoll's saying I'm concerned that there's an attitude problem based on some bad body language. But I'm also saying it could be something else. But whatever the case, it's got to get fixed.
Right.
You know? So, Angela just said in the thing, she goes, I could be wrong, but I was by the tunnel and I didn't see any players leave early. So, and I'm going to go look through her photos and see if maybe, because she took some photos of them in the thing, but you know, maybe he ran in and came back out. You know, I mean, so again, we need to be careful with those type of things, folks. And it could be, but even if all these three are absolute 100% attitude problems, it doesn't mean that the team has an attitude problem. I think in Northern Illinois, game was caused by a lack of maturity of the team, a lack of leadership within the team, a lack of focus within the team, no question. But that's a culture problem. It doesn't mean that there's an attitude problem in the team. But it could also be that. I'm just really careful. I don't want to be that podcast host that just likes to say inflammatory things because you know people are going to run with it and then tune in next time. I want to be right. And so, yes, this could be that, but there's 5 other explanations I could give to you why Mitchell Evans' body language is like what I'm saying. And I'm going to be honest with y'all. I'm concerned that there's an attitude problem there, but I could also tell you what it may not be. It may be something different. You should keep that in mind. Jaden Mickey's thing. It looks like it was a decision. He's pissed off about playing time, but I also know that young man's gone through some major life issues in the last several months that I couldn't even dream of dealing with that age. And so, you know, there's other things involved here. Same with Jalen Snead. Maybe, like, guys, I don't know if you've ever played football, but there has been a couple times in my career as a player and a coach where when that final buzzer went off, I sprinted the locker room. Do you know why? I had to pee, and I couldn't hold it anymore. I'm dead serious. I've seen players sprint the locker room. I'm like, dude, what happened to you? We're supposed to – so, coach, I was literally about to you-know-what myself. Like, guys, that happens in football games sometimes. We don't know if that's me. Like, seriously, it could be something as silly as that. He had to use the restroom and didn't think he could hold it, and they're wearing white pants. If you pee yourself when you're wearing gold pants, it just looks like you're sweating. You pee yourself when you got white pants on, everybody knows you peed yourself. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not even joking here. I'm saying, like, that literally has happened in games. I've seen that happen to Notre Dame players several years ago, where a guy took off a locker room and said, "What's going on?" They had to pee. You know what I mean? Like, it happens. It doesn't happen often. So I just want us to be careful when we're talking about some of this stuff to say, hey, we can talk about maybe there's an issue there, but let's pump the brakes, kind of turn it into a big thing because we don't know that that's what it is. And that's all I'm saying about that particular issue.
Last one, I do believe. Anthony Solomon, thanks for the super chat. For the wives of Vince and Bryan for the late shows. Appreciate that.
Thank you for that. Very, very much.
I appreciate that. And I know my wife will appreciate that as well. So I believe that's it, Brian. So I will close us out here. Thanks, everybody, for hanging out with us on a Monday night. A little bit different, obviously, this week. So I appreciate the patience and letting us do it on a Monday night. And, of course, there will be no upon further review next week because there will be nothing to review. So
unless there's a crazy game that Vince and I want to talk about, but most likely there's
most likely not. Yeah, we'll see.
Most
likely
not.
How it goes. We'll see
There's
how
not
it
a great
goes.
slate of games this weekend either, Vince.
Which I'm really disappointed about because it's a Notre Dame bye week and I have an opportunity to watch whatever I want to watch. And nothing is really all that intriguing, but that's a different conversation for a different time. But hey, we're going to be back tomorrow. Bryan and Trevor will be on at 1:00. And then Sean and I will be back at 5:00 for IB Nation Sports Talk. So make sure you tune in. We're going to keep bringing you info. We're going to keep bringing you shows all week long. It's not a bye week for us. We're going to keep bringing it. And then, of course, check out irishbreakdown.com. Check out the boards.irishbreakdown.com. All kinds of information over there as well. So hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, share with your family and friends, and we will talk to you next time on the Irish Breakdown Podcast. Have a wonderful night, everybody.